right, good morning, everybody. Today is Monday, March 29th, and we are together for a meeting of the Joint Standing Committee on the Environment and Natural Resources. We're assembled electronically for the purposes of inviting public comment on legislation. Specifically, we will hear LD 618, an act regarding the outdoor release and or abandonment of balloons. LD 1023, an act to define intentional balloon release as litter. LD 771, an act to amend the laws governing wastewater treatment plant operator certification. And LD 940, an act to establish appliance energy and water standards. So this meeting is being live streamed on the committee's YouTube channel. That means anyone who's a participant in the meeting via Zoom can be seen and also heard if their microphone is unmuted. If you're a person in the attendee space waiting to testify, please make sure to keep yourself muted. Also, till it's time for you to testify. And also make sure you rename yourself in your square with the name that you registered to speak under. So if you're listed as Dad's iPhone or iPad 6 or something like that, just make sure that you rename yourself. All right, and when you're invited in to speak, it will feel like you're gonna get kicked off, but if you're just patient, you'll reappear in the committee Zoom space, and then we will welcome your testimony. And with that, we're gonna go ahead and start with some introductions of our committee members. Representative Bell, we'll start with you.
Good morning. Art Bell. I represent House District 47, Yarmouth, Chesapeake, and Long Island.
And Representative Ziegler.
Good morning. I am Representative Paige Ziegler from Waldo County. I represent the 7 towns of Belmont, Liberty, Lincolnville, Montville, Morrow, Palermo, and Searsmont. And I have a guest this morning who's watching the process.
Thank you. And Representative Bloom.
I'm Representative Lydia Bloom from House District 3 in York.
Representative Gramlich.
Thank you, Senator. I am Lori Gramlich, and I represent House District 13, which is the lovely seaside community of Old Orchard Beach.
Representative Hanley.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Jeff Hanley. I represent District 87, which is Pittston, Alna, Westcasset, and Randolph.
And my esteemed co-chair, Representative Ralph Tucker.
Good morning. I'm Representative Ralph Tucker from Brunswick, House District 50. Thank you.
And I am Stacy Brenner. I represent, oh, we forgot Senator Bennett. Sorry, Senator.
That's okay, I'm forgettable. I'm Rick Bennett. I represent 13 towns in beautiful foothills and lakes region of Western Maine across Oxford and Cumberland counties. Thank you.
And I'm Stacy Brenner. I represent Senate District 30, which is Gorham, most of Buxton, and most of Scarborough. And we will go ahead and get started by hearing both of the balloon bills, LD 1023 and LD 618 together. I believe that our own Representative Bloom will start, and then Representative McDonald will introduce her bill. One other just housekeeping item before we get started. The chat feature will be used just for logistics and not for any substantive bill conversation. All right, welcome, Representative Bloom.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Brenner, Representative Tucker, and fellow members of the Joint Standing Committee of the Environmental and Natural Resources. I am Representative Lydia Bloom, and I represent the coastal part of York. I come before you today to introduce LD 618, an act regarding the outdoor release or abandonment of balloons. This bill makes a change to statute to reclassify balloons as litter and to make the intentional release of balloons as littering. The goal is to put a stop to large-scale intentional balloon releases and to get people to take steps to prevent balloons from getting loose and seeing that they are properly disposed of. Balloons don't break down over time and they aren't digestible. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service tells us that balloons pose a real threat to both land-based and sea-based animals. Animals are all likely to see a balloon, mistake it for food, and then eat it, choke on it, or get fatally tangled in the attached string or ribbon. We live in a state that depends economically on having a healthy coastline and pristine wilderness areas. The lobster industry alone generates more than $1 billion in economic activity. LD 618 would help us improve the health of our food chain, save the lives of animals, and help us along on our long journey away from plastics. We can and should look at this bill as an opportunity for Maine to join the many other states, about 6 of them, and cities, lots of them, that have enacted similar measures to solve a genuine problem and save a lot of wildlife while we're at it. This bill doesn't ban balloons, but it reminds us to be careful and prods us to think twice before we do something that could harm the world around us with an intentional release of balloons. So the bill that you see is the same bill that was heard in committee last session, and it passed out of committee as you see it, it's written now. So there's a lot of debate on it, and we came up with that bill that also includes classifying it as litter, and also with penalties for the release of numbers of balloons. So I'm happy to take any questions, and I thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Representative Bloom. Are there any questions? Yes, Senator Bennett.
Thank you, Representative Bloom. Do you have information about the status of similar legislation in other states that you could provide, either work session or currently?
Yes, I think there are 6 states, and I believe that in the testimony that follows, you will see them listed. And there's many places, including Nantucket, for example. So there's lots of other just jurisdictions, city and town jurisdictions that have banned them. But yes, I can provide that for you.
Follow-up, Senator, or are you all set? Any additional questions? Yes, Representative Hanley. Representative, you're muted.
On page 1, line 30, it says the intentional release of 10 or fewer balloons. So a child releasing a balloon would fall under that sentence, wouldn't they? Would they be liable to a $100 fine?
No, it's intentional. A child.
Well, I mean, a child that's outdoors intentionally lets go of the balloon.
No, I
They'd
wouldn't
be charged a $100 fine.
I wouldn't consider that intentional.
Well,
and I don't think anyone would consider that a child releasing a balloon is intentional. I think that the idea is it could be a teachable moment from the parent's point of view to say that we should not do that, that we must dispose of it properly. And that's the intent of the legislation. So because it's not banning balloons or sale of balloons, it's merely saying that you cannot, intentionally, what we're trying to really stop is people having parties and releasing balloons.
may I?
But the children, I don't think that's going to be a problem. This
May
is
I have a
not
follow-up?
intended for that. Yes, please.
Yes, go ahead.
So the trouble is, once you put something in black and white and call it a statute, it becomes law and it's totally enforceable. Whether your intention isn't to do that or not, once you put it in law, that's what it is. So as I read this, a child standing on the street corner with 2 balloons and says, watch this, I'm going to let them go. You could technically, under the law, give them a summons for a $100 fine.
I suppose you're right, but I don't think that's going to happen, because I think that the idea here is that if the parent probably would be the one responsible for that. The idea, I mean, we discussed this at the last time, was that this is, we could put something in there if you wanted to, that it doesn't apply to children. We could do that. I mean, I'd be open to that if you want to put something in there.
I'm good. I'm all set. Thank you. Thank you.
Representative Gramlich.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This was along the same lines that Representative Hanley had brought up, and I just wanted to ask Representative Bloom, while we did hear this bill in last session, and we did quite a bit of work in this committee on it, I do recall that the conversation entailed quite a bit of work around intentional versus unintentional, and if children would be held liable. And I just wanted to underscore, and my assumption is that Representative Bloom took all of this into consideration when she reintroduced the bill this session, and just make sure that we've covered all of that, because the intent last session was not to fine children $100 for letting go of a balloon out of their hand. But moreover, the bigger concept of these release parties that occur where balloons then go all over the place into the environment. So my question, Representative Bloom, is did you take all of that into consideration when you crafted this iteration of the bill?
Yes.
Thank you.
Any additional questions for Representative Bloom? All right, not seeing any. I will welcome Representative McDonald. Welcome to ENR.
Good morning, and it's good to see everybody this morning. And I want to thank my colleague Lydia Bloom for caring as much about this issue as I do, and it's an honor to hear these two bills together, and I hope that we can move forward and get something done. Senator Brenner, Representative Tucker, and distinguished members of the Joint Standing Committee on Environment and Natural Resources, I'm Representative Genevieve McDonald of Maine House District 134, and I'm testifying before you today as the sponsor of LD 1023, an act to define intentional balloon releases as litter. Data from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service shows that land-based animals, sea-based animals, and animals that fly are all equally likely to mistake balloons for food, then either eat it, choke on it, or get fatally tangled in the attached string or ribbon. Balloons don't break down over time, are not digestible, and are the #1 killer of seabirds. You may have heard or seen that some balloons are labeled biodegradable, but their actual ability to degrade is a myth that misleads consumers into believing they are harmless. This isn't true. While balloons with the biodegradable label may indeed break down one day, the years-long process leaves plenty of time for them to cause a tremendous amount of damage. Similar legislation passed last year in Rhode Island, where commercial fishermen strongly advocated for the passage of the bill. And the words of Norbert Stamps, an offshore fisherman in southern New England, this is not some bowl pollution legislation. This is the biggest piece of plastic commercial fishermen in New England see in our ocean and on the New England coast. Unlike trash that may remain near where it is thrown on land, balloons can travel long distances by air and in our waterways. In addition to being detrimental to marine life, balloons are a hazard to fishing vessels. Sucking a balloon into your intake, overheating, and possibly blowing a motor leads to a very bad day. People may not realize they are littering and damaging ocean life, but that's what's happening. It's time to define intentional balloon releases as an act of littering so that people know how they are affecting the marine ecosystem. I am a mom to twin toddlers. I know the anguish that occurs when a balloon slips from a child's grasp. LD 1023 does not outlaw balloons and may not prevent the occasional release, but it will stop organized events from being able to legally release balloons into the air and send a clear message to Mainers that intentional balloon releases are damaging. If it pleases the committee, please consider amending the bill during the work session to clarify that it is not a violation of the law to intentionally release a balloon carrying a scientific instrument, a balloon used for meteorological observation by a government or scientific organization, or a hot air balloon that is recovered after launching. Thank you for your consideration, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Representative McDonald. Any questions? Yes, Representative Ziegler.
Good morning, Representative. Two things. Would you be willing to talk to Representative Bloom and combine your bill? And second of all, do you see any issue about small children being arrested for releasing a balloon?
So to your first question, I would be happy to work with Representative Bloom. I will draw the committee's attention to the differences between these bills, which is that my bill does not include any additional penalties. It simply adds balloons to the definition of littering. I do not think that we are going to start arresting children and fining children for releasing balloons, but I very much want to see organized events no longer able to plan intentional balloon releases. And that was the goal that I was working towards with this legislation.
Representative Ziegler, did you have a follow-up?
No, Representative McDonald always finishes the conversation with me.
Excellent. And Senator Bennett?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Representative McDonald, I was going to ask your analysis of the relative advantages and disadvantages between your bill approach versus Representative Bloom's. I think you answered it a bit. I do like the simpler approach personally, because I think it's, but can you provide any further commentary about why you chose to do it that way rather than in the view that apparently came out of the committee maybe last year, from what I'm hearing?
Yes, because last year's bill didn't pass. And so I wanted a bill that would pass. And also the feedback that I received from people was that, they weren't really interested in extra penalties. That was sort of a sticking point for a lot of people. So introducing a bare bones bill, if you will, that will just simply finally get releasing things into the air added to our definition of littering is a great place to start. Personally, I think that Representative Bloom also has an excellent approach, but I will leave that to the decision of the committee.
If I may just follow up, one of my concerns is that, we have what I consider to be a significant littering problem in our state. And just look at the side of our roadways, or, it's quite sad and saddening. And I just wonder, is this going to work? Really, we don't seem to be enforcing our littering laws now very effectively. And I understand the problem you're trying to achieve, but does it going to work just to make it illegal under the existing law, which I don't think is being enforced much?
So I agree. And unfortunately, we do have far too much pollution on the sides of our roads, in our waterways. What this would do was make it so organized events could no longer release balloons. We all see, in the news and on social media that, a sports team or a nonprofit or some kind of organization is planning a balloon release, and this would prevent that from being legal.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any additional questions? Yes, Representative Tucker.
Representative McDonald, the current law that you would be amending, the current law would apply to children, would it not?
The current law doesn't include balloons.
I
Oh,
understand.
yes, it does. Yes. If you were littering, it would.
But if a child threw out a piece of candy, they would be subject to the littering laws like anyone else, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry. I don't think that youth should be exempt from knowing that they shouldn't litter.
Yes, Senator Bennett.
Yeah, sorry to come back around, but littering is illegal, right? And so the question is, why is it that there's any doubt that throwing balloons into the air is not already illegal under our littering law?
That is what this bill is going to address. So if you read our littering law, it's very specific. It really, the type of activity and the type of material that are considered littering are very specific. Crockery, debris, toss. What the words that are missing are release. Our current littering law does not cover airborne garbage. And so that's what this bill would address.
Oh, okay. Didn't know that. Thank you.
Yes, Representative Hanley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. What about newspapers that are blowing? That's airborne debris. If you release a newspaper, would you be guilty of this crime?
Trying to think of how it's written. I don't have the bill directly in front of me, but it does define release, and it does define balloons as being filled with, I think, helium. I'm sorry, I don't have the copy of the bill in front of me, but I did write it to be very specific and narrow and to apply to balloons.
Follow up, if I may. Well, the term airborne to release something into the air. Would a newspaper fall into this category? I mean,
So a newspaper is already defined as littering if you let it go.
Representative Gremlich.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Representative McDonald, for presenting this before us today. I am looking at the text of the bill right now where it's very narrowly defined as balloon. So I wanted to just say that on the record. I'm curious, Representative McDonald, if you've ever heard of newspaper releases where people get together and they take newspapers and they release them into the air. I've never heard of that, but I lead a sheltered life sometimes. So I'm curious if you've ever heard of that. And if so, if your bill would address newspaper releases like we do balloon releases. For example, a dear friend of mine lost her mom, and last year they had a balloon release. And I didn't want to hurt her feelings to let her know that's probably not the best way to honor her mom. But I think we hear a lot more of those types of events. And so I'm curious if you could respond to that.
So to your first question, no, I have not. And as I clarified for the good representative, releasing newspaper is already considered littering. You get to a very good point, because that is something that I hear a lot too, are people releasing balloons to memorialize a loved one. And a lot of people buy biodegradable balloons thinking that they are, not going to harm the environment. And so it's really important for people to understand that biodegradable can still take years for them to biodegrade.
Thank you, Representative McDonald. I appreciate that.
Thank you for the question.
Any additional questions? All right, and with that, we'll welcome Senator Sanborn to provide testimony.
Good morning. It's nice to join you in the Environment and Natural Resources Committee. Senator Brenner, Representative Tucker, and honorable members of the committee. I am Senator Heather Sanborn, and I represent Senate District 28, which is part of Portland and part of Westbrook. And I'm here today to speak particularly in support of LD 1023, though I'm in support of whichever approach the committee wants to take. As some of you remember, a similar bill, obviously LD 937, was introduced in the 129th legislature, and I was deeply disappointed that it didn't pass. And so I've taken the time this morning to join you to register my strong support for these bills very early on in the process. During the public hearing last time around, the Department of Environmental Protection testified that they would be in favor of adding the intentional release of balloons to the definition of litter. And that's exactly what this bill before you now would do. I'm hopeful that this year, this common sense bill gains the support it needs to protect our beautiful state from this particularly curious form of intentional plastic litter that pollutes our waterways and harms our wildlife. Intentional celebratory balloon releases are a relic of the past. Our littering statute should simply put an end to them once and for all. There's no reason why balloons should not be classified as litter, just like all of the other items in our lives that we need to take care to dispose of properly. This is absolutely a common sense change that we need to make. And so I urge you to vote ought to pass. I thought I'd just chime in on Representative Hanley's question about kids. As a mom, I certainly witnessed my son either in defiance, so perhaps with some intention, or accidentally littering, throwing maybe a wrapper or a chips bag or some other type of plastic out a window or on the ground when we were playing in the park or something like that. It certainly happens. Kids litter. They don't get arrested for littering, just like grown-ups litter and sometimes don't get arrested for it either. But what we need to do is to make sure that balloons are simply part of the statute so that adults who are planning memorial services or graduation parties or field hockey tournament celebrations are aware that this is not a culturally acceptable or legally acceptable practice any longer. And it's really simple for us to do that. We already have a littering statute and we just need to add this in. So with that, I'd be happy to take any questions, but really urge you folks to pass this bill out of committee so that we can pass it on the floor.
Any questions for Senator Sanborn? Thank you for joining us.
Thanks.
All right. I don't know if we have anybody from the department here for this bill. I don't think we do. But next up is Allison Hepler. Honorable Allison Hepler.
Great. Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you. Sorry it doesn't have rep in front of it. So, but thank you very much. Senator Brenner, Representative Tucker, and members of the Environment and Natural Resources Committee. I'm Allison Hepler and I represent House District 53, which includes the towns of Aroustic, Georgetown, Phippsburg, Woolwich, where I live, Dresden, and a part of Richmond. And I'm speaking in support of LD 1023, but obviously have an interest in both bills. And I'm doing it on behalf of the lobstermen and fishermen I represent. I want to briefly share two stories about people who don't know each other, fish out of different harbors, and yet have told me the same thing. The first is a lifetime lobsterman out of Phippsburg who, when I mentioned balloons, went on a 10-minute tear about them. He's constantly pulling them out of the Gulf of Maine when he'd rather be lobstering. The second story is from a woman I work with. She's a part-time sternman out of Harpswell. She's not been doing it for very long. I happened to offhandedly mention balloons to her and I heard a similar rant, although hers was full of unprintable words that I'm not going to repeat here. I also had a conversation the other day with a man who manages the Holt Research Forest in Aroustic. He finds balloons throughout the year in this rural coastal forest, one from as far away as Texas and another one from Montreal. The point I want to drive home, as others have also said, is that balloons are litter, they're not biodegradable, which is why this bill is a practical common sense measure. Others I know more about the biodegradable aspects of this and the specific effects on marine wildlife. So the intentional release of balloons for celebration or commemoration, as we've heard, seems no different than tossing trash out of your car, although I can identify with this to a certain extent. Years ago, I was part of a National Kidney Foundation's organ donor awareness event in Portland. My late husband had been an organ donor, and at this event, we released balloons in memory of our loved ones. I remember being surprised and moved the next day when I found a partly deflated balloon in the weeds by the side of the road near my house. So I get it, but I now see the downsides of this. And as far as alternatives to balloon releases, last year, a friend told me a story about a friend of hers who'd recently lost an infant daughter, and she wanted to commemorate the loss with her family and loved ones. She considered balloons, but then decided to go with a lot of bubble bottles and wands that were spread out amongst the group. I saw photos of this event, and it was lovely and frankly quite touching. So I'm a big believer in personal responsibility, and as I will echo the thoughts of others that I'm not interested in arresting children who accidentally let go of a balloon they just got at a fair or a party. But this bill doesn't do that. It defines balloon, or should not do that. It defines balloons as litter and prohibits the intentional release of litter. It's simple and it's the right thing to do. And thanks for your time. I'll take whatever questions you might have.
Thank you, Representative Hepler. Any additional questions? All right, not seeing any. It's good to see you this morning.
Same here. Thank you very much.
Okay, so then what we'll do is we'll move on to folks that are in the attendee space that are here to speak in favor of the bill. If you could raise your hand. All right. We'll start with Robin Seeley, then Richard Nelson, then Sarah Nichols.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Dr. Robin Hedlock Seeley. I'm a marine biologist. I live in Pembroke on Cobscook Bay. Balloons and balloon fragments are the deadliest kinds of marine pollution for seabirds, killing almost 1 in 5 birds that ingest the soft plastic. As I said, I live in Pembroke on Cobscook Bay, and I'm frequently out on the shoreline doing intertidal research or as a volunteer, monitoring the shoreline and woods of the 191 acre Reversing Falls Preserve on Cobscook. I keep a garbage bag in my car continually for trash collected from these places, and often balloons and their deadly ribbons are in my trash bag. Because of the deadly impact of balloons on wildlife and the way they litter and reduce the public's enjoyment of what should be clean public wild spaces, such as our coastal state parks, I urge you to vote ought to pass on LD 618 or 1023 or whatever combination comes out of this. Balloons have been the most recorded debris item floating in Jeffrey's Ledge Marine Sanctuary in the Gulf of Maine for at least 11 years. I found that on one webpage. And on another, in 2018 alone, the Blue Ocean Society found over 750 balloons littering the Gulf of Maine during their litter cleanup events. And finally, a researcher spending 1 week in 2012 on Metnick Island, 7 miles offshore in Knox County, found 3 Mylar balloons still inflated and 5 latex balloons with plastic ribbons stranded at least 10 yards inland just in 1 week. So it's an absolute no-brainer that these balloons are litter. They are littering our Gulf of Maine. They kill wildlife, and after they wash up, they reduce public enjoyment of our wild coastal spaces on the shore. So I'm urging you to vote ought to pass on LD 618 or 1023 or whatever hybrid comes out of this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Seeley. Are there any questions? Yes, Senator Bennett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Dr. Seeley, I was wondering if you could enlighten me and maybe the rest of the committee about what you said. This is a high, there's a lot of balloons you find in the trash. What other items do you think we might consider? I was just looking at the littering statute, and one of the previous presenters was correct that it looks like it may have some holes in it. And it doesn't even mention plastics, at least the part that I saw. Are there other items that you think we should consider focusing our anti-littering law on based on your own experience?
I would say styrofoam fragments are the biggest one. They're not the most deadly. The reason for putting attention on balloon fragments is because they're more deadly, but in terms of frequency, styrofoam is definitely in my top 2.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that.
Any other questions for Dr. Seeley? All right, not seeing any. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
Next up is Richard Nelson and then Sarah Nichols. Welcome, Mr. Nelson.
Hello. I'm Richard Nelson from Friendship. Senator Bennett, Representative Tucker, and members of the committee. I appreciate the chance to speak here today in favor of LD 1023. By my nature, I'm a practical and hardworking man. Although I'm now retired, I have spent over 35 years as a lobsterman, plying my trade on the waters of the Gulf of Maine. We've all heard that that's not an easy life, demanding one's constant attention to the safety of the boat and oneself, as well as to the weather and the sea conditions, all the while catching lobsters and trying to turn a profit. You may think that a fisherman has no time to appreciate his natural surroundings. Not so. As it happens, it is his discernment, the judgment based on his perceptions, as the changes in winds and tides or clouds, and what he hears, smells, or sees that keep him safe and allow him to productively sustain his fishing operations. Now, over the years, there have been a few things that irritatingly stick in my mind as unnatural and unwanted visitors to these surroundings. One that I dare say sticks in my craw as well, and only afterwards realizing that phrase's image of a choking bird. That would be all too often sighting of balloons out on the water. There they drift, limply floating, having lost their ability to stay airborne, soon to sink beneath the depths, an unnatural attractant and danger to marine life and seabirds. Through the years, I've tried to gap most of the ones I've seen to bring them home as the trash they are. For a while, taking photos to send to those involved, their numbers prohibited the time spent. Hopefully others speaking here today will touch more on the wildlife issues. I will turn instead to say that my own industry, the lobster industry itself, has had to conform to similar issues over recent years. Conflicts between fishing gear and marine mammals, especially the endangered right whales, have had us participating in talks trying to reduce these risks. Subsequent regulations have been making changes to methods of fishing, types of ropes used, plus added markings and weak breakable links. All these changes come with added cost to us in time and purchase of new gear. And we must still do more, as this is an evolving process. Whether or not we understand or agree with the laws and regulations, we can still understand the essential needs and efforts behind them. This is a part of doing business today. This is a part of coexisting with the natural world. I would go on to suggest that LD 1023 would only represent a small corrective step in the right direction, but at the same time, it is a very reasonable ask for the balloon industry and the public. I think it ought to pass. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nelson. Are there any questions for Mr. Nelson? All right. I appreciate you joining us this morning, Mr. Nelson.
Thank you.
And Ms. Nichols, welcome. And up after Ms. Nichols will be Peter Blair and then Allison Briggs.
Good morning, everybody. Up here. All right, so good morning, Senator Brenner, Representative Tucker, and members of the Joint Standing Committee on Environment and Natural Resources. My name is Sarah Nichols, and I'm the Sustainable Maine Director for the Natural Resources Council of Maine. And I appreciate this opportunity to speak to you in support of these two proposals to discourage the intentional release of balloons into Maine's environment. Releasing balloons into the air is littering because what goes up must come down. Planned balloon releases should be viewed similarly as if a group of people tossed a bunch of plastic bags on the ground and walked away. Balloon releases are arguably even worse because we don't know where they will land, and they can burst into tiny pieces as they descend from the sky. That is why NRCM supports the proposed penalties assessed on the release of balloons in LD 618, because it would be nearly impossible to impose a fine on the weight of litter that cannot be retrieved. And floating balloon debris is a visible, well-documented problem in Maine waters. And at a national level, one analysis concludes that balloon pollution is the 15th most common item of litter found in cleanups across the US. And data also suggests that balloons cause more deaths in seabirds than any other type of marine debris. Researchers found that balloons are 32 times more likely to result in the death of seabirds than ingesting hard plastic. Mass balloon releases events happen regularly in Maine, in rural and urban areas, primarily with plastic ribbons attached. And those who watch inflated balloons disappear are detached in time and location from the balloons coming back to the earth or sea. And as a result, individuals do not consider balloon releases as littering, unfortunately. And we believe that by passing this legislation, it will be made clear that purposefully releasing balloons into the environment is against the law. And I will say, I talked to my 6-year-old this morning about what I was talking to you about today. And he said, balloons are only good inside. And I said, yes, they are only good inside. So he understands too. And I think that Maine should join other environmentally minded jurisdictions that have prohibited outdoor balloon releases. And we urge the committee to combine these bills into one and vote ought to pass. And thank you for your time and consideration of this common sense legislation that we believe will contribute to the protection of Maine's environment and wildlife. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Nichols. Any questions? Yes, Senator Bennett.
Thank you, Ms. Nichols. Great to see you. I appreciate your explaining why, at least on a social basis, I guess, that why some people don't view this as littering. But reading the law, I mean, it doesn't specify balloons currently, which is the reason for the legislation. But do you based on your testimony, I would assume that you would agree that littering balloons or releasing balloons is littering already. Are you aware, if so, of anybody that's counseling, particularly event business organizers, that this is okay practice in Maine? Are there any public authorities that are telling people, oh yeah, Maine law allows release of balloons?
Not that I know of. And in preparation for the testimony in the previous session, I actually looked up a list at a really long list of all the planned balloon releases that happen regularly in Maine. And I decided not to attach that list because I didn't want to shame the event organizers, and a lot of them were for really just sad events. And I didn't want to draw attention to those. So I guess the point of that is it does happen very, very regularly here. And I will say after the last session, when that bill didn't pass, I was alerted at NRCM that there was a planned balloon release event, some sporting event at Mount Ararat. And it basically activated the barking chain, and everybody just started writing letters to the event organizers, and they eventually changed it. But that was the enforcement. And they did choose not to do it, but it took, me and other members of the public to do that.
So you think that it is illegal under current law, but people may just be confused about it, or the clarity will be helpful anyway, so that we don't have all the disruptions of people having to argue over Facebook about each other's behaviors.
Yes, if I could have linked to a law and said this is actually illegal, you can see here in this law, that would have been very helpful.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Any more questions? All right, thank you so much, Ms. Nichols. Nice to see you. And Mr. Blair is next. Welcome.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Peter Blair. I'm a staff attorney with Conservation Law Foundation Zero Waste Project. CLF Zero Waste Project works to address unsustainable and polluting waste management practices and promote proven waste management solutions like source reduction, reuse, recycling, and composting as set forth in Maine's solid waste hierarchy. Thank you, Chairs Tucker and Brenner, and members of the committee for the opportunities to submit this testimony in support of LD 1023. LD 1023 is a common sense measure that would classify the intentional releases of balloons as litter. As Ms. Nichols said, simply stated, what goes up must come down, and intentionally releasing balloons inevitably creates pollution. While balloons may not crack the top 10 of any ocean pollution list, they still represent a significant level of pollution and litter in the marine environment. During a 9-year period ending in 2016, the International Coastal Cleanup Program found an average of 31,000 balloons each year. Additionally, while monitoring 5 remote beaches in Virginia to better understand the distribution, accumulation, and prevalence of balloon litter in coastal environments, researchers from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration found balloon fragments were the most prevalent type of marine debris. Between 2013 and 2017, these researchers collected 11,400 balloons and balloon fragments from very remote and not polluted otherwise beaches. The prevalence of balloons in the environment creates significant impacts for wildlife. Birds, turtles, and other animals often mistake balloons for food, and when these balloons are ingested by wildlife, the plastic causes blockages of airflows and gastrointestinal tracts and leads to either starvation or death. Balloon attachments, including plastic ribbons, valves, tie-offs, and discs and clips, also present a risk of entanglement, which may strangle or harm wildlife. In fact, as you heard previously, while other forms of plastic may be more prevalent in the marine environment, studies have shown that balloons pose a higher risk of harm for wildlife, generally speaking. Seabirds, in fact, are 32 times more likely to be harmed or killed by balloons than any other form of plastic. On top of the general environmental impacts, balloon releases also cause headache for electrical power lines and electrical suppliers. In September of 2020, nearly 4,000 homes in Southern California lost power after Mylar balloons became entangled in high voltage power lines. These Mylar balloons are made from aluminized plastic film, and their metallic coatings can serve as conductors for electricity, which means they can short transformers and melt wires when they are entangled. In 2019, Southern California Edison reported over 1,000 power outages related to Mylar balloons alone. The environmental impacts balloon releases and balloon litter pose has already marked current legislation across the US. Currently, 5 states, California, Connecticut, Florida, Tennessee, and Virginia, as well as dozens of towns and communities, have already imposed some form of a ban on balloon releases. Additionally, at least a half dozen states are currently considering bills that would do the same this session. Moreover, the Balloon Council, the industry that represents balloon retailers, distributors, and manufacturers, recently have revised their previous stance to now oppose the release of balloons. So even they have come around to realize the harm that this does. CLF would like to offer one proposed amendment to LD 1023. It should be amended to clarify that it is not a violation of the law to intentionally release balloons for scientific or meteorological purposes. That's contained in Representative Bloom's bill, and I think would be an important clarification. But overall, given the severity and harm that balloons pose to wildlife, CLF strongly supports LD 1023. This is a common sense measure that would make intentionally releasing balloons clear and defined as litter. By specifying this in very concrete terms, it will help educate Mainers and law enforcement officers who will be in charge with carrying out the statute. Thank you for your time and consideration of this testimony. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Awesome. Thank you, Mr. Blair. Any questions for Mr. Blair? All right. I don't see any. Thanks for joining us. And next up is Allison Briggs. Welcome, Ms. Briggs.
Thank you. Good morning, Senator Brenner, Representative Tucker, and members of the committee. My name is Allison Briggs, and I am a student at Maine Law and a legal extern at Maine Audubon. Thank you for the opportunity to share testimony in support of LDs 618 and 1023 on behalf of Maine Audubon and our 30,000 members and supporters. Plastic bags, straws, and other single-use plastic beverage accessories are widely recognized as litter. Resources are committed to educating the public on how to properly dispose or limit the use of these products. But as you have already heard today, balloons, though equally or more harmful to wildlife, are not widely recognized as litter. A recent study details the relationship between seabird mortality and balloons. There is a 20% chance that a bird will die from ingesting a single item of marine debris. Balloons, the study found, are the highest risk debris item. A bird that ingests a balloon is 32 times more likely to die than a bird that ingests hard plastic. Balloon litter is not just a coastal problem. Maine Audubon Scarborough Marsh Director Linda Woodard shared with us that several years ago, she found a balloon in the marsh. On closer inspection, she saw a school's name printed on the bottom. The school was familiar to her. Maine Audubon had done educational programming at the school, and it's located in Bangor, well over 100 miles away from where she stood. Linda shared her story with a teacher, and the teacher, like so many others, hadn't considered what happened to balloons once they are released into the air. LD 618 in particular incorporates intentional balloon releases into the existing graduated fine structure. The more balloons someone releases, the higher the fine will be. Maine Audubon believes that this is useful because it would levy a meaningful fine against those who release huge clusters or netfuls of balloons at sporting events or other ceremonies. This practice is particularly egregious, and larger fines may be necessary to stop these incidences. Maine Audubon encourages the committee to support LDs 618 and 1023. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Briggs. Senator Bennett has a question.
Yes, Ms. Briggs, thanks for your testimony. I was wondering if you had any insight as to how we could get better enforcement of existing litter laws as well. You mentioned you support the graduated fine system, that you think that might be helpful, but are we just not enforcing the law enough? Are we not charging enough? Or, I mean, we're dealing with a social issue, pressure on this balloon issue, but to me, I mean, people, you're driving down the road or you're going to a parking lot and you see somebody throw something out their car window, and as infuriating as it might be, it's hard to know what to do with that information, right? So how do we change the culture here?
I don't have a great answer for that. I definitely could do research and get it to you. I will say, historically speaking, litter laws just aren't a top priority for whatever reason for law enforcement. I think that it's just an issue of manpower and how important the general public sees these issues. So I don't know. I agree that something needs to change on that end, but I think as others have said today, it's very important that at the very least we have in statute something to point to once we do take those steps. I think it's important that balloons are considered litter, aside from all of these enforcement issues that exist.
Just a quick follow-up. I don't disagree with you at all. I'm just wondering, it's nice to put stuff in statute, but the sides of our roadways are still filthy, and there's people that feel like it's okay and it's not a big deal to just dispose of stuff into the great outdoors. I'm just wondering, does Maine Audubon or some other environmental organizations that you have programs for education or re-education on these sorts of things?
Sure. I know that part of Maine Audubon's mission is to educate the public on these kind of issues that harm wildlife. As far as I know, there's not a specific program that's taking place right now that is educating people about balloons in particular, but that's definitely something I think that would be powerful and helpful, and something that other wildlife organizations could get on board with as well.
Thank you, Ms. Briggs. Any additional questions? All right, not seeing any. Next up is Marge Kilkelly.
Good morning, Senator Brenner, Representative Tucker, Senator Bennett, and members of the Joint Standing Committee on Environment and Natural Resources. I am Marge Kilkelly. I live in Dresden, Maine. Back in 1990, as a member of the House, on behalf of a group of elementary school students, I introduced similar legislation to this, which after much debate resulted in a joint resolution concerning the release of helium balloons. And that's in my testimony, and I won't read it for you. But my hope is that 21 years later, this issue and all of us have matured to the point where we can pass this as law. As I thought about the logic of this bill, it occurred to me that if I were to walk into a shop and purchase 10 balloons and have 5 inflated with helium and 5 not inflated at all, and then I walked out of the shop and intentionally threw the 5 uninflated balloons on the sidewalk, I would likely be charged with littering. However, if I intentionally throw or release the inflated balloons into the sky, I would not be charged with littering. So throwing the balloons on the sidewalk is littering, but throwing or releasing them into the sky is not, even though the end result is exactly the same, if not worse, because it's harder to find the 5 balloons that I let go that have flown out over the ocean or over anywhere else. But the result is that there will be litter. And it's just very clear to me as a fairly pragmatic person that litter is litter, and that it doesn't matter how you deploy the litter. What's important is that it is litter. It also occurred to me last night that if releasing litter into the sky isn't an issue, maybe we should just all fill our trash bags with helium, tie them up and let them go. Because in fact, that wouldn't be considered littering either. So I think it does make sense to finally resolve this issue and for the state of Maine to be clear that it doesn't matter how you release it. If you intentionally release it, it's litter. thank you very much. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Ms. Kilkelly. It's nice to see you. Any questions? Yes, Senator Bennett.
Thank you, Senator Brenner. Senator Kilkelly, great to see you. It's been a long time. In fact, I hate to do this, but you said it was 21 years ago that in 1990 you presented that resolution. You missed a decade. It's 31 years ago.
Oh, see, I can't even admit it to myself how long it's been.
Anyway, great to see you, Senator, again, and thanks for your testimony.
Thank you for the correction.
Any additional questions? Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
And next up, we have Melissa Gates.
Hello, thank you so much. My name is Melissa Gates. I'm the Northeast Regional Manager for the Surfrider Foundation. I use she, her pronouns, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you today. I don't want to rehash what's already been covered. I think the environmental concerns with the intentional release of balloons has already been really well covered. I did want to point out that in LD 1023, that it would be really helpful if that's going to be merged with 618 to add the framing intentionally release or abandon to clarify the intents of that legislation. Right now, it's just listed as release in the prohibition section. And that definition of balloons that's in LD 1023 is pretty strong, and that would be a great addition to LD 618. I also did want to cover that there is a great organization dedicated to education on balloons. It's called Balloons Blow. They have a lot of great information about why balloons are a threat to the environment and beyond. They've been trying to help educate about balloon release for quite some time. And of course, we've all been trying to educate about littering for decades. And the reality is that education alone is not solvent of the pollution problem. We really do need laws to mandate behavior. And these bills really do provide a good avenue forward for clarifying that intentionally releasing or abandoning balloons is in fact litter. You know, we need laws like bans on single-use plastics for things like straws. We need laws like extended producer responsibility for packaging to really shift the narrative from what we're finding in the environment littered to putting responsibility on manufacturers for reconfiguring how they're packaging things in the first place. And those tools that we have legislatively, combined with the ongoing education that we've been trying for a long time, will actually reduce the amount of litter that we find in the environment. Because of course, it's not only intentional littering that's a problem, it's also a whole host of other issues that wind us up with litter in the environment, from unlidded trash bins and breeze picking up litter and blowing it all over the place and into our marine and terrestrial environments and beyond. So I urge the committee to really look at both of these bills and to pass them favorably out of committee. It's time that we clarify that intentionally littering balloons is littering. So thank you for your time today. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Ms. Gates. Any questions? All right, not seeing any. Thank you for joining us. And is there anyone else in the attendee space that is here and wishes to speak in support of LD 1023 or LD 618? Please raise your hand. All right, Francesca Gundrum. Welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much. I'll get right to it. Good morning, Senator Brenner, Representative Tucker, and members of the Committee on Environment and Natural Resources. My name is Francesca Gundrum, and I'm Communications Manager for Maine Conservation Voters. MCV protects Maine's environment and our democracy by making conservation, equity, and voting rights political priorities. And I'm testifying today in support of both LD 618 and 1023, or some hybrid of the two. I have spent thousands of hours at sea and along our coast studying Maine's wildlife. I received my MS in wildlife ecology from the University of Maine in 2019, and have worked as a marine mammal research scientist with allied whale at the College of the Atlantic, as an ocean naturalist with the Bar Harbor Whale Watch, and as a coastal birds biologist with Maine Audubon's Piping Plover and Least Tern Recovery Project. I have seen more deflated, sun-bleached balloons floating in the Gulf of Maine than anyone needs to see in a lifetime. And I'm only 25. I've personally collected hundreds of balloons from our ocean and beaches, and I'm testifying today to urge this committee to help encourage Maine citizens to celebrate life's big moments responsibly. As many have already noted, when a balloon is released, it always finds its way back down. They pollute our forests, clog our waterways, and can harm or kill land and marine wildlife. Sea turtles mistake balloons for their staple jellyfish, whales can unknowingly ingest them as they feed, and birds can easily get tangled in the attached ribbons. I've personally seen it all, and it's time for our state to address this issue and define the release or abandonment of balloons as littering. While out on research trips or leading whale watching tours, my captains would do their best to slow down for us to grab as many balloons as possible each trip, but we were always outnumbered. When I worked as a coastal birds biologist last summer, I carried an empty backpack with me on all my surveys to collect plastic debris. Balloons were amongst the top few items I collected near the nests of the endangered birds our team worked to protect. And that backpack was often full at the end of each day. I know you have all seen the happy birthday relics snagged in trees or washed ashore. It's time to create new traditions to celebrate our milestones, but first, Maine must do what we can to protect our state's wildlife and environment from balloons now. 355 Maine citizens signed our petition in support of this effort, and I've attached said signatures to my testimony today. And before I close, I just want to encourage you all to take a look at two additional testimonies. One from a group that's been brought up a few times by others who have testified, Balloons Blow. They submitted testimony this weekend, as well as another group, Blue Ocean Society. And they're one of Upper New England's leading marine debris organizations, and I highly recommend you take a look at both of those testimonies. So with that, I thank you, both Representative Bloom and McDonald, for presenting both of these bills to the committee. And for the health of our wildlife and wild places, Maine Conservation Voters strongly supports this bill and urges you to vote ought to pass. So thank you for the opportunity to present testimony today, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions for Ms. Gundrum? Yes, Representative Tucker. You're muted, Representative.
Thank you very much for coming, Ms. Gundrum. Our current littering statute is not a criminal statute, it's a civil statute. And it does not require that the violation be intentional. It's like going through a stop sign. You don't have to show that someone intentionally went through a stop sign. All you have to do is show they went through the stop sign, period. There's no requirement of intention at all in our current littering statute. Why should we impose the additional burdensome evidentiary requirement that with balloons it has to be intentional, which is very difficult to prove, where we don't require it for other things?
So the question, sorry, I just want to make sure I fully understand. It's about whether or not, should we make this more comprehensive?
Why should we make balloon releases a violation only if we can prove that it's intentional inside somebody's head, that they intended to do it, whereas all the other littering statutes simply require proof that the object was disposed of, period? Why should we make it harder to prove than regular littering?
Right, I think, and again, just to make sure I fully understand, I would encourage this to be broader, personally, if I was writing this, but I understand that this a version of this bill was brought up to the committee last year, and this is where we are. Yeah, I'm sorry if I'm not being incredibly helpful, but I do hope that this moves forward and that we can, as a society, recognize that releasing any kind of litter, intentional or not, is wrong, and we need to make sure that we enforce it. And if I may, I believe Senator Bennett had a question for I think it was Allison Briggs, and I have an answer to that question, which might jump onto yours, Mr. Tucker.
Okay.
Sure.
Okay. The question was, how do we change this? How do we actually move forward as a society? And two things come to mind. First is the intentional release of balloons that are helium inflated. It's where are you getting the helium? They're from party stores or from another location where you're blowing up those balloons. So start at the source. So when folks buy those balloons and get them inflated, that's a point of education, letting them know that hopefully some hybrid of this bill, both of these bills or one of these bills, is move forward, and that if there are plans to release them, that here's why you can't and you shouldn't. And then also it starts in schools, which I think has been brought up, but there, I think, in great educational programs like organizations like Maine Audubon that can really jump in, and kids today are changing and different, and they really do care about our environment. And I believe that that's a great two places to start. So I hope I answered both of those questions somewhat.
Thank you for that. Any additional questions? All right, thank you for joining us. You have a doppelganger with the same name, so the other Francesca Gundrum, if you could identify yourself. The gentleman with the whale backdrop and the hand raised, that's who I'm talking to. You're still listed as Francesca Gundrum, so if you could identify yourself.
Okay, can you hear me?
You can, yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Sorry about that. Francesca was kind enough to share her link with me because I couldn't get to it. So my name is Zach Cliver, and I am here representing Blue Planet Strategies. I'm the science director. We're a Maine-based organization found in Bar Harbor and Augusta. And we use science, law, and the power of partnership to find strategic solutions that address the biggest threats to our world's oceans. I am very pleased to have a chance to talk with you. Thank you for this opportunity, and thank you for the representatives that brought these bills forward. I'm super excited that you're moving this direction and prepared to address this, and hope that you will pass this legislation. I grew up in a fishing family in Eastport, and after college, I started working as a whale watch naturalist in Bar Harbor. I became the lead guide of Maine's largest boating tour company. And during my 30-year career there of guiding trips, taking over 600,000 people whale watching on 3,000 whale watching tours, I got to see a lot of garbage in the ocean, and progressively more over my career, and a lot of balloons. We took a lot of balloons out of the ocean. We made an effort to stop when we would see a balloon or a bunch of balloons, and it really was probably the most exciting thing we could do on a trip beyond seeing whales. People would cheer when we brought the balloons on board. They understand that when balloons shrink, they look a lot like jellyfish, and a lot of animals eat jellyfish, including all the endangered sea turtles. I remember just a few years ago on one tour, it was the very first whale watch of the season. Throughout the trip, we kept seeing a balloon here, a balloon there, and I think our total was 17 balloons on that one tour at the very first beginning of the season. We know balloons pose harm to wildlife. I also had the real pleasure of serving for a number of years as the vice president of the Friends of Maine Coastal Islands National Wildlife Refuge. As you know, the refuge is one of our crown jewels along the coast of Maine. It's 10,000 acres. It's 73 magnificent islands that are teeming in seabirds, 4 beautiful coastal mainland divisions. And it was here nearly 40 years ago that Steve Kress from the Audubon Society began this project to reintroduce puffins. And he started releasing young puffins. And now they have returned. There's over 1,200 pairs of nesting puffins on 7 islands. It's one of the most remarkable conservation success stories. And I have had the pleasure of taking tens of thousands of people to see puffins and seabirds. We have a lot of people that come from out of state that are passionate about bird watching, that want to see seabirds. We have some all-day seabird tours they're completely dedicated to seabirds. But we also run puffin trips, and one of the things that I got to share with people that came from around the world to Maine to experience our beautiful islands is that these techniques that Steve developed for saving seabirds here, they've been brought all over the world, right? There's dozens of seabird conservation projects that have now benefited from the techniques developed here. So I'm in real complete support of doing everything we can to maintain our beautiful islands and the seabirds and the wildlife. Plastic in the ocean is a crisis. It's an unbelievable crisis, and I believe that we all can do our part, and this is part of that. I'm submitting an article that was published by Mother Jones on the impact of plastic on the food chain, breaking down into small bits. It's a very comprehensive article. If you have the time, I think it will benefit you in understanding this issue. But needless to say, it's a real concern now that the plastic is breaking down at the ocean, entering our food chains, and entering the seafood that we value so much. Lastly, let me say that I think this is a great effort to leave the world better than we found it. And if you saw the latest David Attenborough film, he talks about the gravity of where we are in this world right now. It's overwhelming, the impact that we're having. And he talks about not just holding the line, but rewilding the wild. And I think we need to do that. We need to be thinking about how we improve our environment. And I think the people that come here from other states, if they understand that we have legislation that's progressive toward protecting the nature that they come here to experience and see, and understand that we're doing things to take care of it, they're only going to think better of us. And of course, tourism is our biggest industry. So I think it will be wonderful for us to have that opportunity to share this with the public. So thank you very much for this opportunity to speak.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kleiber. Are there any questions? All right, not seeing any. We have had a handful of folks join us during this hearing, so I'm just going to have them introduce themselves. Representative Johansson has joined us.
Good morning, Senator. Thank you. I'm Chris Johansson. I represent House District 145, the 18 organized towns in southern Aroostook County. And I had introduce a bill of my own this morning, so that's why I'm late joining with you all here. So thank you.
We're glad you made it. And Representative Dudera.
Thank you, Senator Brenner, and good morning to everybody. I'm Vicki Dudera. I represent District 94, Camden, Rockport, Islesboro, and I apologize for being tardy. Thank you.
Welcome. We're glad to have you all, no matter when you can join us. And Senator Carney.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm Ann Carney. I represent Senate District 29, which is the very windy this morning area of South Portland, Cape Elizabeth, and some of Scarborough. And I was doing other committee work this morning as well. Happy to join the Environment Committee.
Welcome, everyone. All right, and then back to balloons. If there's anyone in the attendee space here to speak in opposition to the bill, if you could raise your hand. And if anyone's here to speak neither for nor against the bill, if you could raise your hand. All right, anyone else to speak on behalf of balloons one way or another? This would be the time to let us know. And not seeing any. With that, I'm going to end the public hearing. Oh, yes, Representative Johansson. Whoops, you're muted, Representative.
I have a couple things I would like to have when we go to the work session on this. I don't believe that there's several district attorneys that I don't think would prosecute a littering. They're just overwhelmed or for whatever reason. If the police believe that, they're not going to write tickets for it. But there's a large amount of crimes that they will not prosecute. The other thing I'd like to suggest is if you could have a Northwoods law where one of the game wardens was counseling people on balloon releases. I think you could get them to do that, and I think the colonel would go with it. But it'd be going a long way towards educating people. If that warden was talking to a family about why they shouldn't release it, don't let them release it, and then. But I think something like that would be very helpful. And you've got the platform to do it on with Northwoods law.
Okay. Yes, Representative Tucker.
Could OPLA please get for us a list from the Judicial Department of the number of convictions for the civil offense of littering, please?
Representative Johansson.
Thank you. I had forgot this. I wanted OPLA to contact let's say the Kennebec County District Attorney and see if they would issue a complaint on a summons for, and I'm not talking about vehicle and traffic littering. I'm talking about something like this, the violation of littering.
Okay. Anything else? All right, and with that, we will end the public hearing on 10:23 and 6:18, and a work session will be scheduled in the near future. All right, and next up is a public hearing for LD 771, which is an act to amend the laws governing wastewater treatment plant operator certification. And I believe first up for this bill is Brian Kavanaugh from the DEP. Yes, Representative Tucker. Whoops, you're muted, Representative.
Representative Martin is present. He is the presenter for this bill.
Oh, well, let's take a pause on Mr. Kavanaugh and ask Mr. Martin if he can join us. My apologies. Welcome, Representative Martin. Thank you for joining us.
You see me yet?
We can hear you, but we can't see you.
Okay, well, I'm here, so it doesn't matter. I can start
Whoops, now you're muted. Oh, now we can see you, but we can't hear you.
I'll unmute myself over here.
There we go.
Okay, I'm John Martin, and Senator Brenner and Representative Tucker, I am the sponsor of this bill. I represent District 151, which begins in Allagash, comes down Route 161 to Fort Kent, and down Route 11 through my hometown of Eagle Lake all the way through Ashland and finally to Oxbow, and all to the Canadian border to Quebec. And this legislation is really an attempt to consolidate what has happened over the years If you go through the statute, you'll find going back to 1969, 83, 89, 99, etc., changes that have been, and additions that have been made to the statute. And so this is a department bill, and what they're attempting to do is to consolidate and put into, so it makes sense, so that someone can take a look at the statute and has an interest in the profession, and they can then proceed to take it from there. It really is a great bill, even though I didn't write it, the department did. And I think it'll be a step forward in trying to consolidate. And I'm going to leave you because I go present another bill to another committee, but Inland Fish and Wildlife. But if there's any questions right now or in the future, I'd be happy to respond to them.
Great, thank you. And I'm sorry I didn't bring you in first.
Not a problem.
Are there any questions for Representative Martin? All right, not seeing any, we'll send you off to IF&W.
Thank you, take care.
You as well. All right, and Mr. Kavanaugh, welcome.
Good morning. Can you hear me okay?
We can, yes.
Great. Thank you. Senator Brenner, Representative Tucker, members of the committee, I'm Brian Kavanaugh. I'm the Director for the Bureau of Water Quality at the Department of Environmental Protection. I'm speaking in support of LD 771. Maine has 161 municipal and quasi-municipal wastewater treatment plants. These facilities treat wastewater from our homes and our businesses so that it can be safely discharged to the waters of the state. These treatment plants are multi-million-dollar facilities built primarily with federal and state funds that protect the waters of the state, protect public health, and provide a foundation for a strong economy. Maine also has numerous other industrial wastewater treatment facilities. The operation of all of these treatment plants is a very important job that takes a great deal of knowledge and skill. As authorized by 32 MRS Chapter 62, the department administers a program to certify persons as to their competency to supervise the operation of a wastewater treatment plant. Maine has approximately 755 certified wastewater treatment plant operators. Statutory authority for this program was originally established by the legislature in 1969. LD 771 strengthens and updates certain aspects of the current law. Wastewater operators are dedicated, highly skilled professionals, and we're grateful for the important work that they do. However, unfortunately, over the last few years, the department has encountered several instances of certified wastewater operators acting in ways that bring discredit to the profession and pose a risk to water quality. These include acts such as falsification of data, false statements, tampering with equipment, and other unethical behavior. These instances are rare, but when they occur, the department must have the authority to respond in a manner that provides appropriate consequence and deterrent. Sections 10 and 11 of the bill modify the current authority for revocation of an operator certification by district court in certain instances. In the department's experience and based on guidance from the Office of the Attorney General, the current statute is not structured in a way that allows it to be used effectively. The bill contains changes to the statute so that it could be used effectively by expanding the options for responding to this type of conduct. These changes are intended to provide the department more latitude in resolving egregious operator conduct that cause violations. The intent behind the proposed changes is to provide the department two new avenues to resolve operator conduct or actions that lead to violations. One, the department seeks civil enforcement against the operator. This could mean the issuance of a notice of violation, seeking resolution through an administrative consent agreement, or resolving the matter in district court. These are the same avenues the department currently utilizes to resolve violations with wastewater treatment plants, districts, and towns. Number two, the department may seek to suspend an operator certificate for a period of time rather than revoking the certificate. Section 11 removes the requirement that revocations and suspensions be sought in district court and provides this authority to the department after the opportunity for an administrative hearing. Revocations and suspensions can be appealed to the Board of Environmental Protection and in Supreme Court, or Superior Court. The other sections of the bill clarify and update existing authority for the operator certification program and direct the department to conduct rulemaking, to administer to the law, including not limited to provisions for establishing the basis for classification of wastewater treatment plant, provisions for establishing requirements for examinations, qualifications and ethical standards required of candidates to obtain certification, and procedures for examination. To enact these updates, the department plans to use a rulemaking stakeholder process to modify the existing department regulation, Chapter 531. In closing, LD 771 will enable the department to strengthen the wastewater operator certification program. I ask for your support of LD 771. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have now or at the work session. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kavanaugh. Representative Bloom has a question for you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Kavanaugh, this is a very interesting bill, but I was not aware of the problems that you've had. But what I was aware of was that we have a lot of aging operators in the wastewater treatment in Maine. How does this bill help that? Or is that just really a completely different subject?
That really is a different issue. There is some things that have been done over the last couple of years to address that particular issue. We do have, as many professions, an aging workforce. A lot of the people that originally came into this profession after the Clean Water Act went to programs in state. SMTC had a program, so you could go and enter this profession after taking those courses. That went by the wayside quite a few years ago, so there really hasn't been a course to bring people in. But a couple of years ago, Northern Maine Community College developed a course, and there's also work being done to develop a course in Southern Maine now. So those are benefits that may move things along in terms of getting more people into the profession. Also, the three associations continually try to bring people in. There's on-the-job training. JETSI, the Joint Environmental Training Coordinating Committee, has developed several new programs to bring people up from kind of a base level up into more management capabilities. So there's a variety of things going on, but the two community college courses that are now available are the best thing to bring people in.
And if I may follow up, so the bill in front of us then is just helping you with the program as it stands now, and cleaning things up as from what I can see, and making sure that you have a lot of tools in your tool chest to deal with any issues.
Yeah, the bill really does two main things. It gives us two new tools to deal with the unfortunate egregious conduct that we sometimes see. It's pretty rare, but when we see it, it needs to be dealt with appropriately. So it gives us two new tools to deal with that, but it also goes back and updates and organizes and clarifies some of the existing language that's pretty old at this point, bringing it more into the modern age.
Thank you.
Senator Carney.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Mr. Kavanaugh, if this legislation is enacted, will it lead to kind of a net increase in the amount of training that operators receive, both annually and throughout the course of their careers? And if so, can you speak a little bit to how the training will be improved?
There's nothing in this bill that changes the amount of training that's necessary. So anyone that's a certified operator needs 18 hours of training credits, continuing training credits every 2 years. And so their certificate has to be renewed every 2 years. They have to document they've got those 18 hours of continuing training. And there's a variety of ways that people can get that. The three wastewater associations in the state, they all have annual conferences where they provide training. There's the Joint Environmental Training Coordinating Committee, which is one of the original entities to provide training. They provide training. Also, there's private trainers. People can get credit for certain college courses. There's online training. So there's a variety of ways people can get those 18 hours every 2 years. But this bill doesn't change any of that.
Thank you.
Representative Tucker.
Good morning, Mr. Kavanaugh.
Good morning.
I noticed that many of the changes are simply in terminology, bringing the terminology up to current standards from what, 30 or 40 years ago? Is that correct?
Yeah, the original bill was 1969. Some of it's from the 70s, some of it's from the 80s.
Okay. However, the new part of it I'd like to ask you about are the new administrative remedies and the new administrative authorities that the department is seeking. Will they result in fair and effective enforcement and oversight rather than having to go to district court all the time for something?
That is our intent. And again, sometimes we may go years and never see something like falsification of data. I want to stress that it's rare. We have a great deal of respect for the people in this profession. They generally do a really good job, and it's a very difficult job. But occasionally, and in the last several years, we've seen several cases, which is unusual, and it's been concerning. And when we see that type of conduct, particularly something like falsification of data, it's important that there's a response from the department that provides a strong deterrent, hopefully that can be done quickly and has a significant consequence to it. And what we're seeing in the existing statute is if, for instance, we wanted to revoke someone's certification to go to district court, in terms of resources, legal resources to do that, it's pretty intensive. And we've just had a hard time being able to get to that stage. So we conferred with our attorneys and attorneys at the AG's office about what additional tools could we have to deal with that kind of egregious conduct that would be short of going to district court. And that's what this bill gives us, is the ability to either revoke, and also an additional authority here would be to now be able to suspend someone's certification, and do that through a department hearing or a board hearing. So that would be a new tool. And then also for us to be able to use the existing enforcement tools that we use for any regulated entity, such as a notice of violation or a consent agreement. So we're trying to get a new way to deal with this type of conduct that's more streamlined and that we actually can use.
Mr. Kavanaugh, does your bill contain due process and procedural safeguards to make sure that the administrative process is just as fair and effective as a court hearing?
Yes, I think we would need to conduct these hearings under the existing authority in Title V, and that statute lays out all of the different provisions for conducting a hearing in terms of notice and public participation and evidence and a record and how the decisions are made and who the presiding officers are. So any hearing that we had to conduct would have to be under that existing statute in Title V.
Thank you.
Representative Dudera.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Kavanaugh, I'm wondering, I don't think I heard you address this. First off, will there be sort of an education piece to let people know about, the new stipulations under this bill? And secondly, do you have any sense of what this will cost the department? I mean, hopefully you're not going to have to do any of these hearings, but are you going to have to bring on extra personnel to be able to handle this? Thank you.
Sure. In terms of the first question, in terms of outreach, we're in pretty regular contact with the three main wastewater associations. And whenever there's any kind of significant change, we put notices out through our own newsletter, our own letters to the regulated community, and through each of the three associations. So we would certainly do that. And we've notified each of the three associations of this bill, and I expect you may hear from them today. In terms of the cost, I don't envision any cost here that we couldn't absorb. Again, these are pretty rare occurrences. We may go years with never needing to use this authority. You know, it just in the last several years, we've seen 3 or 4 of these types of cases over the last 5 years or so. So I don't envision there's any cost here that we can't absorb.
And may I just follow up? And you would think that this will be preventative too, in a way.
Yes, ideally, it's to create a deterrent from this kind of behavior. You know, there's a lot of self-monitoring and self-reporting under the Clean Water Act and this program. It's really the foundation of the program. So it's extremely important that there's always integrity in that data. And so there has to be a strong deterrent for people to know that that is just about the worst thing you can do is falsify the data. Having an effluent violation, that happens. You know, we understand that for a variety of reasons. It can be dealt with, but the underlying data has to have integrity to it. So the intent of this is to create a strong deterrent so people don't go down that road.
Representative Bloom has a hand up, but I'm not sure if that's a residual hand or a fresh. No, it's gone down.
Residual.
Okay. Residual. All right. Any additional questions for Mr. Kavanaugh? All right. Not seeing any. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
And if there is anybody in the attendee space who's here to speak in favor of the bill, if you could raise your hand. We are looking for those in favor of LD 771. All right, not seeing anyone. We'll move on to anyone opposed to LD 771, if you could raise your hand. Bradley Sawyer. Welcome, Mr. Sawyer.
Thank you very much, Senator Brenner, Representative Tucker, members of the Committee on Environment and Natural Resources, and Mr. Clay. My name is Brad Sawyer. I'm a so far lifelong resident of Augusta and the Director of Government Affairs for the Maine Rural Water Association. We agree with Mr. Kavanaugh in the sense that wastewater operators are professionals committed to keeping their communities and the environment clean. The vast majority are excellent at what they do and comply with all applicable laws and regulations. As with all industry, there is a small minority who are subpar, and rural water supports intervention when serious issues arise or operators are no longer acting in good faith. We do not want our testimony today to be interpreted in any way as willful protection of bad actors. Excuse me. Rural Water is opposed to LD 771 in its current form, but believe this bill can play an important role in starting a thorough and inclusive discussion. While the bill relates solely to wastewater operators, the web of certifications and licenses in the industry is more complicated than that. There are roughly 35 joint utilities in Maine, meaning they handle both water and wastewater, and their operators hold dual licensure. They're not alone, though. Many operators who work for a single purpose utility hold at least some level of certification in the other field. The licensing and regulatory authority on the other side, the Board of Licensure for Water Operators and the Drinking Water Program, have different rules and procedures than the DEP, which leads to a web of regulation for operators to navigate. Coincidentally, the Board of Licensure for Water Operators, it will be very soon examining and revising their procedures. And we would respectfully ask this committee to urge the DEP and the Board of Licensure for Water Operators to combine these two processes. The water and wastewater industry is a small community, and operators often work with state regulators, usually ending with an understanding and agreement on major issues. We believe that given the level of demonstrated cooperation in the past, a stakeholder group made up of industry professionals and regulators would be best suited to examine these ideas and develop language that could be brought back to the legislature as an encompassing piece of legislation. Many of our members are also concerned with the implementation of these rules across the state. In any situation where human judgment is used, there will always be discrepancies, and that's understandable. We don't say this in any way as an accusation. It's simply based on anecdotal evidence. With the proposed increase in the power of the department, there's trepidation that utility size, geographic location, relationship with inspectors, or other variables may create different outcomes for different utilities. When legislation comes forward that makes suspension or removal of licenses and ultimately those operators' livelihoods easier, operators flinch even if they've done nothing wrong. I liken it to when you're going the speed limit, your seatbelt is buckled, and a police officer pulls up behind you, one tends to tense up. We hope that should this legislation pass, the department would work proactively to inform operators of changes made that and allow enforcement actions to be phased in as education is applied. And I would agree with Mr. Kavanaugh that they do communicate with our association and the others on these topics, and certainly thank them and appreciate that that cooperation. Thank you for the time today. I would be happy to attempt to answer any questions.
Representative Hanley?
Yes, thank you, Senator. Mr. Sawyer, when this legislation was being drafted, did the department ever contact you or your organization to get your input on how this should be rewritten? This language should be written.
We were contacted about the start of session with the language when it was a legislative request before it was given a bill number, and there was some discussion that took place within the industry and the department. I know one of the other wastewater organization had more comprehensive discussion with Mr. Kavanaugh in the department. But we were certainly aware that it was coming, and it was part of our conversation.
Follow up, if I may. Yes, thank you, Mr. Sawyer. But I mean, did they actively seek the input? Did the department seek your input into what they were trying to do here? Or were you left out of this bill writing process entirely?
The department certainly came up with the language. And then shared it with us and asked for or to make sure that we were aware that it was coming, but the department did create the language.
A follow up again. So in other words, you weren't asked to say to add to the language or remove anything. You were simply instructed that it was coming.
Yes.
Representative Tucker. You're muted, Representative.
Good morning, Mr. Sawyer. I'm curious about the relative lines of supervision here. You mentioned about water utilities, and then you talked about wastewater utilities as separate lines of action, okay? Is it true that the PUC is what regulates water utilities, or is it the DEP? And then in regard to the wastewater plants, is it the DEP or the PUC? I'm just curious how that works.
Yes, thank you, Representative. The PUC does not regulate wastewater utilities. They do regulate water utilities from I'm unsure of I'm sure the correct term, but the customer relations and the cost side. The water quality regulation comes from the drinking water program, which is in the Department of Health and Human Services. So, and then the regulation on the wastewater side is from the Department of Environmental Protection. So there are, and we are not proposing that those be combined. I think the current situation works well for everybody, and certainly the relationship with the folks at the drinking water program it is good from the industry level as well. I think where our members are coming from is if we could bring those entities together to create similar rules, I think they're quite similar industries that would make it easier for operators to deal with, and to previous questions, could incentivize or make it appear that it isn't such a complicated web for new people to join the industry.
May I follow up, please?
Yes, of course.
So to understand what you're asking for here, you're asking that there are different statutory structures for supervision of wastewater treatment plants and water utilities with different agencies, maybe 3 different agencies involved. Do you want to somehow have uniform disciplinary rules within all those different statutory structures?
I don't know if I'd say 100% the same, but I think largely the 2 structures could be made to look very, very close, and that would make it easier for folks to kind of keep up with and keep tabs on what needs to happen. I know the board of the water operator board will be starting their rulemaking, or excuse me, looking at their rules and procedures sometime, I imagine, this year. We know discussions have been in the works, although they haven't put anything out for public comment at this point. And so knowing that that process will be happening, we thought the opportunity would be there for some collaboration.
So do some of your members hold both a water utility license and also a wastewater operator license?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Representative.
Any additional questions for Mr. Sawyer? All right, not seeing any. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
And are there any other folks in the attendee space that are here to speak in opposition to the bill? All right, not seeing any. Are there any folks here to speak neither for nor against the bill? Mr. Tim Wade, we'll bring you into the attendee, to the panelist space.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
We can. We can't see you, but we can hear you.
Let me fix that real quick. How about now? Wonderful. Thank you. My name is Tim Wade, Senator Brenner, Representative Tucker, and members of the ENR committee. And I am representing the Maine Water Environment Association. I'm here to testify neither for nor against, but mostly in support of the language in the intent of LD 771. MWEA is one of those training organizations that Mr. Kavanaugh spoke about, or sorry, wastewater associations. We differ from the others in that we simply represent our membership. We do not typically offer trainings as a couple of the other organizations do. We represent upwards of 650 individual members, most of whom are employed by the 130 some odd publicly owned treatment works facilities that Mr. Kavanaugh spoke about. And from that membership, there are 2 parts of this bill that had concerns for us. Mr. Sawyer did a great job speaking to both of them. I'm going to give you our couple concerns from our standpoint. I'm going to save you the tedium of reading verbatim the testimony I submitted and just hit the highlights. Wastewater operators take a great deal of pride in the work that we do. Our number 1 priority is making sure that the health of both the public and the environment are kept at the highest level. Anytime you have a group of people that take a lot of pride in the work they do, and you mention the word revocation, it's going to make us twitchy. Even the best operators, the ones that are by the book and do everything right. I share all of the concerns Mr. Kavanaugh does. None of us want to in any way give the idea that we want to harbor support mistakes made or in the very rare cases that Mr. Kavanaugh spoke about, intent to mislead. We want those bad apples to be held accountable for what they've done. I do want to point out that this bill is drafted does greatly broaden the department's disciplinary authority. We do think that mostly that's not a bad thing. However, like Mr. Sawyer mentioned, we are concerned that the department may struggle to be consistent and fair with disciplinary enforcement across the board, especially as they are just getting this authority under their belt. The other portion of this bill that also concerns MOWEA, as it did Maine Rural Water, is the training aspect of it. We did work with Mr. Kavanaugh as MOWEA over the last couple of years, giving suggestions. And one of the big suggestions we had was the language in regards to training. This is in section 7 of the bill. And part of the training verbiage used was advanced training in the technical and legal aspects of water pollution control and distributive information. We have suggested and continue to suggest that language should actually read something more like training in the supervision, management, and operation of sewage collection and wastewater treatment systems. And this small change in the language will allow for a much larger and wider variety of approved trainings to help us meet the needs of the incredibly wide variety of facilities in the state. We represent folks that work at Portland Water District with well over 100 employees managing their wastewater system. And we work with folks from places like Jay Sewer Department, which has 1 full-time employee. The training needs of these people and the facilities that they operate are vastly different. So we just want to make sure that while we're in here working on language updates, that the training requirements reflect what is needed by our membership. In conclusion, MOWEA largely supports the intent to LD 771. We would like to see modified language as has been mentioned. I'd be happy to take any questions now or at the work session later.
Any questions for Mr. Wade? Yes, Representative Tucker.
Hello, Mr. Wade.
Hi.
If your concern is consistency, would you prefer to have to go to district court where you don't know who you're going to get, judge of the day or whatever, and the only remedy is revocation, flat out revocation, versus going before the department, which specializes in this field and has a variety of remedies such as suspension or temporary suspension or counseling or whatever? Which method do you think would be more consistent?
Yeah, well, first and foremost, I hope that myself nor any of our members would get to the point where we had to go to a hearing at all. But if it did lead to that, as I stated in the testimony, sir, I think that we are largely in favor of everything that Mr. Kavanaugh spoke about. And I do believe that the department may be better suited to handle case-by-case scenarios. It's just something new. As has already been discussed, our membership and our operators are largely aging. And so, anytime you wave a new bone in front of an old dog, it's, difficult to jump on board with. And that's been the general feeling from the majority of our membership, just some concern with this change.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Any additional questions? All right, Mr. Wade, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
Are there any other folks in the attendee space that are here to speak neither for nor against the bill, or for the bill at all? Any other folks here to speak? All right, not seeing anyone. That closes our public hearing on LD 771, and we will schedule a work session in the near future. Are there any folks on the committee that are requesting additional information from OPLA in advance of for the bill analysis in advance of our work session? All right. With that, I think what we'll do now is take a 30-minute break. So it's noon. We'll come back at 12:30. We'll finish our public hearings for the day. We have a number of people scheduled to testify on LD 940. So I think we'll be better listeners with a little bit of lunch. And we'll see you all at 12:30. Thank you so much. All right, if folks are ready, we will move ahead with our hearing. We're missing one person. Oh, great. Let's bring Representative Pluker over to the meeting, and we will begin a public hearing on LD 940, which is an act to establish appliance, energy, and water standards. Welcome, Representative.
Thank you very much, Senator Brenner, Representative Tucker, and the members of the Energy and Natural Resources Committee for allowing me to present LD 940, an act to establish appliance, energy, and water standards. This bill is a close copy of the bill that was passed by this committee in 2020 and passed the House, but was left in the Senate as we left the State House due to COVID. The bill is about efficiency, efficient use of dollars spent on electricity, gas, and water, and efficient use of the natural resources which produce that energy and bring the water to our homes. The bill will save ratepayers approximately $9 million annually in 2025 and up to $36 million annually in 2035. Savings only increase over time and the products are adopted. As new appliances are installed, the rate of savings increases. These numbers do not include potential savings from computers and computer monitors because we don't have current data for products in the market, though this bill does regulate them. Nevertheless, we expect those numbers and these numbers would dramatically add to the overall savings from this bill. These are dollars which will stay in the main economy with the senior citizens, rural families, and small businesses that need them most. This bill is taking money out of the hands of utility companies and putting it back in the hands of our citizens. We do this by taking advantage of the fact that there are already many models of products on the shelves which are more efficient than others. By steering buyers toward the most efficient products, they will see long-term savings that quickly pay back their upfront costs and multiply as the years go by. There are 16 other states that have passed some form of efficiency regulations on various products and appliances. These programs and bills have been written and instituted in discussion with the manufacturers of the products. As these products are already being produced and sold in our state and across the nation, the implementation of these statutes do not pose a real difficulty for either manufacturers or consumers. In order to avoid administrative costs and having to reinvent the wheel in terms of regulation, this bill allows us to follow the fundamental structure of the California system of appliance regulation. They have a list of products that are easily accessible on their online database. The office in charge of the program can then submit a report to the Legislative Committee of Jurisdiction to update the main statute as it is deemed appropriate when the California regulations are changed. I believe there will be a representative of the tech industry presenting today a potential amendment to the bill to make it clear the ways that the regulations will mirror the California regulations. And I look forward to working with him and the committee to make sure all parties are satisfied with the bill as we did in 2020. I also believe that there may be a relatively large change presented today from the executive branch to move the action of this bill from the governor's energy office to the DEP. I've heard that the DEP and energy office are in agreement on this move, and the commissioner is here today to speak to it. The original version of this bill before committee amendment in 2020 placed the work of this bill with the DEP, and I'd be happy to work with the commissioner to make this change happen once again. Along with my testimony, we have provided a 2-page summary of the advantages of this bill, including a detailed chart of the savings to be achieved from each individual product. We have laid out the average savings from each product with both cumulatively and through the years, and the expected payback on each appliance. No used products or their sales are affected by this bill. All products may be repaired and updated as the owners like. This is not affected by the bill in any way. We only address the sale and installation of new appliances. This is a bill about efficiency, efficient use of dollars, and efficient use of resources. We have the chance to be a part of a growing movement of states implementing implementing efficiency standards. While some set their sights on large-scale green energy generation, there is a quieter, cheaper way to move us forward as a state. We must take action in this in a coordinated way in order to fully realize the savings for the state as a whole. If we continue to wait for the market to address this issue, consumers will be throwing away their money on high utility bills while waiting for a solution. As we all know, the cheapest energy is the energy we don't use. We have the products in the market. These products will save us money. It's time we took advantage of this opportunity as a state. Thank you very much. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Representative Fluker. Representative Tucker has a question.
Good afternoon, Representative Fluker.
Good afternoon.
All I wanted to say basically was, with the angle of the camera on your laptop and looking up at you from below, you look just like the Paul Bunyan statue in Bangor. Thank you.
Isn't that so? Any other comments or questions for Representative Fluker? All right, thank you so much. Representative Dodera has a question.
Well, I just have to chime in. My middle son, who maybe didn't hear so well when he was little, he used to say tall Bunyan.
That's great. All right.
Thank you, everybody. And I think there will be folks following me who can speak more directly to the amendments that I mentioned in my testimony.
Great, excellent. And I believe next up we'll bring the department in. I believe Commissioner Loisum is here. Thank you, Representative Fluker. Welcome, Commissioner.
Good afternoon. Senator Brenner, Representative Tucker, and members of the Joint Standing Committee on Environment and Natural Resources. I'm Melanie Loisum, Commissioner of the Department of Environmental Protection, providing this testimony in support of LD 940. Energy efficient appliances reduce electrical bills for consumers and reduce greenhouse gas emissions if that electricity is generated by non-renewable resources. In the Maine Climate Council's plan, Maine Won't Wait, the Council recommended adoption of appliance efficiency standards for appliances not already covered by federal standards, such as computers, portable air conditioners, and water coolers. The bill before you covers those and more. There may be debates about the merits of including or excluding certain products, which the department happily leaves to other interested persons to address for you today. It is worth noting, however, that this bill would not cover any appliances that are not already prohibited from sale in California, the largest consumer product market in the United States. National product development and sales is better influenced by many states pushing for the same thing, rather than individual states with low market share creating boutique standards. Also, creating new programs like sales prohibitions requires staffing and has other associated costs that can be lessened by copying other states' requirements. Last session, the department worked with Representative Fluker, the Governor's Energy Office, and Efficiency Maine Trust to determine the most efficient way to implement prohibitions on the sale of certain products in Maine. Last year's bill was amended to the approach you have before you now in LD 940 to align with California's standards. Unfortunately, it's still not a perfect fit. The state cannot prospectively incorporate by reference another state's standards, and California does regularly adjust their standards to keep up with changes in technology. This means there will always be some products first prohibited in California that can still be sold in Maine, which one or more state employees would have to keep track of and be able to answer questions from consumers, retailers, distributors, and manufacturers. Since last year, the department has continued conversations with the Energy Office and with Efficiency Maine Trust regarding implementation of these prohibitions in Maine, and now recommends that the DEP implement the program due to our existing rulemaking authority and experience implementing other bans on consumer products. This program is not entirely self-implementing and will create real demands that divert staff time away from other priorities. Therefore, while the department supports this legislation as an important strategy to reduce greenhouse gas emissions from our residential and commercial sectors, neither the department nor any other state agency can take on this effort without at least one additional staff and all other costs, including data management. To refer the program to the department and align it with other existing programs, the department recommends a few amendments to this bill, which I have submitted with my testimony. The suggested amendments would place the proposed prohibitions in a new section in Title 38, Chapter 16, which is an existing chapter, Sale of Consumer Products Affecting the Environment. It would authorize the department to maintain alignment with California standards by updating the prohibitions through routine technical rulemaking rather than requiring annual legislation. And it would add a provision recognizing that any prohibitions that may be preempted by federal law or regulation would not remain in effect, similar to what we've proposed for the HFC legislation you heard earlier. Thank you for the opportunity to provide these comments, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Does anyone have a question for Commissioner Loisum? All right, not seeing any. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Now we will move into folks that are here to speak in favor of LD 940. If you could raise your hand in the attendee space. And the only other, let's see, I'm going to bring Mr. Stoddard in first to speak. Welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning or afternoon now. Thank you for having me. And my name is Michael Stoddard. I'm the Executive Director of the Efficiency Maine Trust, and am here to speak in favor of LD 940. Again, thanks. I also should note that I was the co-chair this past year with Kathleen Neal on one of the working groups in the Maine Climate Council that was responsible for looking at policies and programs to help reduce greenhouse gas emissions from the buildings sector. And appliance standards was one of the policy tools that we looked at and talked about and recommended in that process. Just a bit of context for why Efficiency Maine is supporting this proposal. Over the last decade, as you see partway through my testimony, Efficiency Maine has really had some good success, and that success doesn't just accrue to us, it accrues to all the policymakers and the marketplace and the consumers of Maine. And we're getting good recognition nationally for success in running programs and purchasing and using equipment in an innovative way, and a way that's well administered, and the funds are carefully accounted for, and it's very cost effective. So we're doing good things for our economy and for our environment. In our most recent annual report, we calculated that our programs leveraged $49 million of incremental private investment in energy efficiency upgrades throughout the state. One of the dividends of that is lower energy bills. I think that's probably the most important one we all care about so much. And we estimate that over the life of those high efficiency products that were installed, more than $237 million in lower energy bills will result. That translates into a benefit to cost ratio of between 2.3 and 2.5 to 1, depending on the fuel type being displaced. So really good stuff. We're so gratified to see those results. But we need to also recognize that there's a cost to that. We are at Efficiency Maine using a variety of funding streams to help provide a financial incentive to get the private sector to be making those investments, to leverage those investments. And those costs can be quite significant. They really add up over the course of a year. And so while financial incentives will always have an important role to play in these kinds of market transformations, there are other policy tools that under the right conditions can be even more effective and less costly. And so that's why we think we should always be considering those when the opportunity presents themselves. Appliance standards are such an example. They are considered in the next era of energy policies and programs that the state will need to implement in order to facilitate and accelerate our transition to low carbon, high efficiency energy consuming devices. So we really think that it's important that Maine have this tool in its toolbox if it's going to reach those goals. And I'll stop there, and I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you so much, Mr. Stoddard. Representative Tucker has a question.
Hello, Mr. Stoddard.
Good afternoon.
Could you please, for my benefit and perhaps the committee's, step back for a moment and kind of give me an idea of when the whole efficiency standard movement started, and elaborate on what the commissioner touched upon, is that there are federal standards and there are state standards. And I want to know how this whole movement unfolded and when, just as a way of, as a background, because we're hearing the federal law, the state law, you know, and so you kind of get a little confused as to what's going on here. If you could explain the historical background of this, it would be very helpful.
I will give it a shot. I don't claim to be the deepest expert historian on these matters, but I'm quite familiar, I think, with the history of this concept of appliance standards in Maine and in the states at the state level. I actually became involved with early proposals to do something like this in the early 2000s. I'm going to say it was 2003, 4, 5, somewhere in there. And there's a pretty long-standing frustration in the energy advocacy community with the degree to which federal standards are just, they evolve at a glacial pace. And at least one of the given reasons for that is that the manufacturer lobbying efforts are so powerful and successful at that level that you rarely see progress keeping up with the new technology in the federal standards. And so it emerged in that time period I mentioned, 2003, 4, 5, as I recall, that the states noted there were a lot of products for which there was no federal standard that would preempt state action. And so the states, as Commissioner Loisem mentioned, the states established this practice of developing a model rule or a model policy, looking at a dozen or so commonly consumed products and figuring that they could raise the bar to a level that would for which there were many, many models to choose from. So not excluding, not setting the bar so high that maybe there's only 1 or 2 models left that would pass the test, but that there would be ample range of models. And they perform just as well, if not better, than the thing we've all been accustomed to. But there's one of the sort of cardinal barriers to increasing energy efficiency is this routine that the supply chain gets into, where when they run out of a product on the shelf, they go to order new supply, and they ordered the same thing that just ran out. So there's this sort of perpetual motion machine where they keep ordering the same models because that's what the customers just bought. Customers just bought it because that was the only choice they had. So these policies were designed to help sort of break that cycle and allow new, better, higher efficiency products to come in. They also have this benefit to everyone, especially if they're electrical. They have this benefit to everyone on the grid in that we reduce our strain on the grid. We don't have to expand it as fast. And that's a very significant financial savings to us all. So it has environmental savings as well as economic.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Stoddard? Yes, Representative Hanley.
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon. Good to see you again, Mr. Stoddard.
Likewise.
I'm reading through this legislation. I see a lot of the type of incandescent light bulbs that are listed very common. And by this legislation, I mean, you're removing a whole host of lights that if you go into any hardware store, big or small, you'll see shelves of this type of fixture. And you're going to remove this, this legislation is going to remove the free choice of people to buy these products. What's going to replace them? It says you can't, it'll be a crime, $100 penalty, in fact, to offer for sale these things. what's going to replace them? I don't see any replacement. I just see a prohibition. And what's the cost difference for the new product?
There may be folks who are going to follow me in testimony who would be better situated to give you the specifics of what the replacement models are, but I'm quite confident that in the vast majority of cases of the particular product you're pointing to, which is lights, that there will exist a multitude of options that are lower energy consuming, and in almost all cases, I'm imagining those are going to be LED light bulbs. There was a period of time when we had the compact fluorescent light bulbs, which were only so-so in their quality and some of their performance issues. LED lights do not have those same challenges. So, and 10 years ago, there weren't that many variety of LED lights, and they were quite expensive. They're not so expensive anymore. Through mass production, their prices come way, way down. And many of them are still eligible for a small incentive from Efficiency Maine. They're ubiquitous. You can buy them at every store in Maine. And so my hunch is that LED lights would be there. I don't think that the Appliance Standards Awareness Project that has been providing guidance to states like Maine on this issue would put a product on this list for regulation if there weren't good available alternatives that are very cost effective.
A follow-up, if I may. Yes, thank you. I also see a lot of appliances that use water, like shower heads, laboratory faucets, metering devices, kitchen replacement aerators, and all kinds of other spray sprinkler bodies, water dispensers. I mean, I remember years ago, Jimmy Carter mailed every one of us a shower reduction orifice that you put in your shower head. You couldn't give a cat a bath with the amount of water that came out of that. So are we removing from a population the right to choose what kind of shower they're going to get to have? That when I read this kind of stuff, it makes me a little nervous. Do you see any issues there?
Well, I do know that I was around when those first generation of shower heads came in, and I wasn't a big fan of those either. Pleased to report that the products have improved immensely since that time, and I don't think people would really notice the difference in the quality of that and or the sprays nozzles that they use for commercial kitchens, or if you might have on your kitchen sink to spray food off your dishes, and also the aerators. So they should perform the same or just as well, if not better, than the thing they're replacing. And luckily for all of us, the technology's gotten much better. The good news, though, is that when you use less water, you also save quite a bit of money on your heating bills, because you have, one way or another, you have to heat up that water for your shower or to do your dishes. And so you can save not only the water sewer charge, but also a significant utility costs associated with heating that water. So it is one of those things that makes sense to include in an appliance standard.
Follow up, if I may. Yeah, yes, I understand all you're saying, but the issue that makes me sit up and pay attention is that people lose the right to choose whether their shower has enough water, the amount of water coming out of it they wish. Not everyone is on city water. In fact, I think a majority of Mainers are on private wells. So the amount of water I pump out of my well into my shower is none of the government's business. And when we allow government to be the arbitrator of every little facet of our life and every little faucet of our life, why not just let the citizens have the free choice to choose what kind of fixture they want? If I want a toilet that flushes well, or a shower that works well, or a kitchen faucet that works well, or if I want to save the amount of water I'm going to put through that device, Why can't I have both of those options on a hardware shelf? Why does the government get to make that choice for me?
Well, that's a pretty broad question, Representative, but also a fair one. And I would just say that that's only one side of the equation. It's a very important part of the equation, but the thing that I think policymakers are juggling and trying to balance is the other side of the equation. And that is, what are we going to do about the various impacts that hit our community in a variety of ways associated with how we consume energy, the energy that is required to run these products, whether it's electricity or heating oil or propane or natural gas or whatever it is. And as we are all now increasingly aware, there are some consequences from the use of that energy. And when we look at the sort of the portfolio of tools that we can work from to try and reduce our energy use and cut down on our greenhouse gas emissions and other kinds of pollutants, what we find is that you can pay these kinds of programs that Efficiency Maine runs, but they require quite a lot of cash to keep them going. And eventually, once there's enough choices in the marketplace so that people can still get the quality of the performance that they want, and at an affordable price, in fact, a cost-effective price, so that the lifetime savings from the energy savings will more than outweigh any cost associated with this different product, that might be the time to shift from an incentive program like Efficiency Maine over to a standard. We do it with buildings and building codes. Appliance standards is very analogous.
One last, if I may, Madam Chair.
Yes, of course.
Sorry, Mr. Stone, you're up on the stump. I'm going to ask all these questions.
Well, we missed each other, so it's time to catch up.
Yeah, that's all right. I mean, I go back to my original question is, why not let people choose what they want and let the marketplace work? Give them good information. I mean, to confess, my entire home is all LED lighting because it works, but no one had to pass a law to make me buy them. I put them in. And so I think good information is more useful. The other issue I have with this legislation is the proposal to let California make regulations and we automatically go in lockstep. I do not like that type of legislation at all. So I'll leave you alone now, Mr. Studd. Thank you.
All right. Representative Johansson has a question.
Thank you, Senator. And I can see where you can save money using a different light bulb, but you didn't ask me to turn the light down by half and try and get by with that. Most of the water I use is by quantity, a 5-gallon bucket, a pan full, a sink full, or enough to get the water out of my hair, which doesn't take nearly as long as it used to, or as much water. By putting water restrictors on there, you're just making it take more time. I don't see where you've saved anything. And could you help me out with that? How I would save water or electric?
Well, it clearly does save water. I think that if any folks have not had the experience of using some of these low flow devices in recent years, they are qualitatively different and better than those of a generation ago. And what they lack in volume, they make up for in force. So they spray harder. And I think that's the answer to how they get the performance at a lower volume. And then if there is less volume, then that translates into an energy savings if it's hot water that you've been using, because now you have much less water you need to heat. So I think that's the answer to your question. I'm also pretty confident there are folks who will testify after me who would be more expert in the individual products.
Representative Johansson, did you have a follow-up or are you all set? Okay. Are there any more questions for Mr. Stoddard? Thanks so much for your time. All right, and we'll move on to Mr. Costello and then Mr. Gibson.
Good morning. Can you see me and hear me?
We can. Welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Senator Brenner, Representative Tucker, and members of the committee. My name is David Costello. I'm the Climate and Clean Energy Program Director at the Natural Resources Council of Maine, and I'm testifying today in strong support of LD 940. Reducing Maine's second largest source of carbon pollution, residential and commercial buildings, will require the state to dramatically scale up its incentives and funding for energy efficiency improvements and facilitate a significant increase in the availability of private sector financing. It will also require the tightening of appliance, lighting, space, and water heating system standards in the implementation of stricter building codes. Quite frankly, if you consider the cost efficacy of certain things, codes and standards, as has been pointed out, is among the most cost-effective thing we can do to address climate change and conservation. LD 940 will aid in reducing Maine's, has been noted, Maine's energy and water usage and greenhouse gas emissions by establishing stronger efficiency standards for certain residential and commercial appliances and plumbing and lighting products. It will accomplish this, has been noted, by aligning Maine's appliance and product performance requirements with nation-leading efficiency regulations already in use in California. States like California typically lead the nation in establishing such standards. In adopting similar requirements, Maine will help in accelerating the acceptance and implementation of constructive energy and water use standards across the country. And I'd love to answer questions about water conservation if there are any. It's extremely important, particularly as we talk about the impacts of climate change, extreme weather, and drought. Additionally, the setting of these requirements, Maine households and businesses, has been already pointed out, will not only aid in achieving a marked reduction of the state's carbon and other pollutants, but will also benefit from an improvement in the usefulness of the covered appliances and also from a reduction, as has been stated, in utility bills, significant reductions, millions of dollars that has, again, Representative Pluker did a great job in talking about how many millions would likely be saved, and those savings would certainly provide an economic boost to local businesses and communities. It's also worth noting, as has been noted, that Maine's new efficiency standards would apply only to new products. No one would be required to replace existing less efficient appliances unless they so chose. For these reasons, we urge the committee to join NRCM in supporting this important efficiency initiative. Thank you for your consideration. I'd be happy to answer any questions that anyone might have. Thank you.
Representative Dudera.
Thank you, Chair Brenner. Thank you, Mr. Costello, for your words. My question is around, you've just mentioned how important water conservation is, and it has been brought up here in this public hearing, the amount of Mainers who are on wells as opposed to public water. So when you're talking about water conservation, can you comment on, is this important across the board, whether you're on public water or whether you're on a well? I'd like to just hear your thoughts on that. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Representative Dudor. Groundwater is shared by all, even though we may have individual wells. Those wells tap into underground water, groundwater and aquifers. And clearly what science has shown as we deal with greater impacts, greater droughts, is that we're draining our aquifers. We're lowering our groundwater, and we're slowing the recharge of water into the groundwater. So it's a collective challenge. It's a collective challenge not only in Maine, but certainly in other parts of the United States and globally, that we're running out of fresh water, and we're running out of fresh water quickly. And ultimately, it's going to be a national security challenge as we tackle that. But it's extremely important. It's certainly important to the water industry, which is big in Maine. As you probably know, more wells have had to be drilled to sell water out of state. So when we consider water, it is a shared resource, and we should be mindful of that.
Mr. Costello, I have a question for you. Would you,
Senator.
what is the percent of Mainers that are getting their water from a well versus a municipal water source? Is it about 50%?
I'm sorry, Senator, I can't answer that question. That sounds about right. If someone from DEP is on, I'm sure they could answer it for you.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Mr. Costello? All right. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. And we're moving on to Mr. Gibson and then to Marianne Damasio. Welcome, Mr. Gibson.
Good afternoon, Senator Brenner, Representative Tucker, and members of the Environmental and Natural Resources Committee. My name is David Gibson. I'm a resident of Morrill, and I serve as the Vice Chair of Sierra Club Maine. Today, I'm speaking on behalf of Sierra Club Maine and our 22,000 members and supporters across the state. We'd like to voice our strong support for LD 940 to create appliance standards. I have more than a decade of experience with energy efficiency and clean energy programs, including 5 years teaching middle school and high school students about efficiency and how to reduce energy consumption in their homes. I've spent a lot of time talking about these exact types of things, encouraging students to replace their light bulbs with LEDs and install low flow shower heads. I myself have tried at least a half dozen different low flow shower heads. And just like any other shower head, there are some that are better and some that don't work very well. And I've certainly had regular flow 2.5 gallon per minute shower heads that I thought were terrible as well. And I can say that we currently have a 1.5 gallon per minute shower head that I think is the best thing that I've used in a very long time, and it costs $4.99 at Walmart. So these appliance changes are certainly affordable for all. And a single low flow shower head adhering to the California standard of 1.8 gallons per minute compared to a typical one that's 2.5 gallons per minute that's sold now will save an average household 7,000 gallons of water a year. And so if you have an electric water heater, the energy to heat that will save the household $125 a year. And clearly that varies depending on how you're heating the water and how much time you spend in the shower. But there's very, very significant savings available both in the water and the energy. However, I also want to encourage the committee to consider amending this legislation. I think that it's missing the appliances in our home that use the most energy. It doesn't appear to apply to water heaters or dryers or fossil fuel powered heating equipment. Our boilers and furnaces and space heaters, which are the most energy consuming and most expensive appliances in our households to run. And so we, with the Sierra Club, would like to encourage the legislation to also include fossil fuel powered water heaters and furnaces, boilers, and space heaters, and require that they all achieve at least a 95% combustion efficiency to help reduce the amount of fossil fuels consumed and save money on the heating and hot water bills for households across the state. And further, we would love to see the committee consider phasing out those types of fossil fuel appliances over the next decade to encourage a transition to even more efficient options like heat pump water heaters and heat pumps for heating our homes. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. But I do hope that the committee will consider expanding this bill to include other types of appliances that use a lot more energy as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gibson. Any questions for Mr. Gibson? All right. Thank you for joining us. Next up is Marianne Damasio. Marianne, maybe you can help me with your last name.
Sure. Hi, it's Marianne Damasio.
Great. Thank you. Welcome. Thanks for joining us. All right, thank you. Good afternoon, Senator Brenner, Representative Tucker, and members of the ENR committee. Mary Ann Damasio, I'm the State Policy Manager for the Appliance Standards Awareness Project in support of LD 940. And our organization works to advance cost-effective appliance standards at both the national and state level. So I work in a lot of states as a state policy manager. And our report and recommendations that we wrote on state appliance standards called States Go First provides a lot of the background and savings analysis for this bill. So I just have basically about 3 points to make, be brief. So in terms of federal standards, Maine residents today are already saving about $530 per year on their utility bills from over 60 efficiency standards on the federal level. So what this would do is adopt standards that are not already on the federal level. And I think, as Representative Pluker said before, it would add about $9 million in savings on utility bills to in 2025 alone. And then by the time more people buy the efficient products, it will grow to $36 million in 2035, just for that 1 year alone. It's not a cumulative number, as more and more inefficient products are replaced. And the savings would be seen across Maine, residents, businesses, and keep more dollars in consumers' pockets and available for spending in local economies. Second point is a couple of things about the products, that all of the products are cost effective for consumers. So when we do this and we make recommendations, we make sure they're cost effective for consumers and businesses that purchase them. They're all already on the market today. They're not, new things that manufacturers produce. And importantly, no one has to get rid of an inefficient product in their home or business and go out and purchase a new product when the bill goes into effect. It just means that when they do purchase a new product, the choices on the shelves will be the more efficient products. And third, the growing number of states are adopting standards. Massachusetts Governor Baker on Friday signed a bill that included efficiency standards for 17 products. Other states that have adopted them in the East include Vermont, New York, and the District of Columbia. And then in the West, California, Colorado, Hawaii, and Washington. And then most other states in the Northeast, except for New Hampshire, have either adopted standards or have filed bills. So Connecticut, Maryland, Rhode Island, Pennsylvania. So this could lead to a strong regional effort. And if adopted, the standards are nearly 2 years away, so it provides a fair amount of time for distributors and retailers to sell non-compliant products before that time. It's over 18 months away. And if I may just add one thing about faucets that were an earlier question, that faucets, if you're filling up a bucket outside, that have no impact on filling up a bucket, that the standards do not apply to outside hoses and spigots. And if it's in the kitchen, the standard has an effect of having a certain amount of gallons per minute. And then if you're filling something, it can bump up to go faster, and then it returns to the rate. Like it goes up to 2.2 gallons per minute. So those two things can help for people who are trying to fill things up quickly. And in closing, I would just say it's a great way to cut energy waste, reduce utility bills and greenhouse gases. And I would be happy to answer any additional questions about standards that you have. Thank you. Thank you so much. Representative Dudara has a question for you. Yes.
Thank you very much. So you just have piqued my interest about the faucet. So can you just go on again, if you're filling something up, how that works?
So there's a standard. I don't know the technology behind it, but there's the standard, and I'm pretty sure I have this right for kitchen faucets. I believe it's 1.8 gallons per minute. One of the faucets is 1.2, and I'm not remembering if it's bathroom or lavatory, but I think it's 1.8 in the kitchen. There's an option when you're filling up. It's kind of like a boost. So if you're filling up a pot, so you don't have to stand there and wait, the faucets can go up to 2.2 gallons per minute while it's filling up. And then it just goes back to 1.8. So I don't know technologically how that happens, but those are the standards that are set so that it doesn't take so long to fill up a pot. Any other question? Representative Hanley has a question for you.
Okay.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Ms. Damasio, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thanks. So what you're describing is the amount of water coming out of the faucet that anyone can control by simply turning the faucet all the way on or partially on. Why do we need the government to mandate this type of a faucet if an individual standing at the sink can do the same thing?
Basically, I think it's just a question of policy of a way to save money across the board and to save energy. And yeah, it's just a possibility for the state of Maine to take action and use less water, less water that's heated.
If I may.
Yes, please.
Yes, you know, my wife and I, in our home, we are on a private well. So the cost of moving the water out of the ground into the house is entirely my issue. And, you know, we do a lot of canning and we need a lot of water to do that. So why can't I just turn on the faucet as I wish to have it? If I want to fill a glass slowly, I can. Or if I want to fill a cooking pot quickly, I can. Why do we need government law to mandate what type of device I have on my sink?
Well, I think that's the choice between the committee today to decide that. So that would be your choice to vote on this or not. But in my opinion, I think it's a good opportunity, as I said before, to save energy and money.
Thank you.
All right, any additional questions? All right, not seeing any. Our next attendee moving over to speak is Jeff Marks and then Anya Fetcher. Welcome, Mr. Marks.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Senator Brenner, Representative Tucker, and members of the Environment and Natural Resources Committee. And thank you to Representative Blucher for bringing this bill back this session. Acadia Center supports this bill. We support the concept of implementing state-level appliance standards as part of a comprehensive energy efficiency portfolio. I think we all know, because of the success that Maine has had, that energy efficiency is really a cornerstone of effective state energy policy, and Maine's been a leader in providing cost-effective energy solutions across different fuel types and sectors. But we can always do more to achieve greater energy and cost savings, and we believe this bill provides yet another tool to reduce both energy costs and consumption in buildings while reducing greenhouse gas emissions. Last year, when this bill came up, Acadia Center, in partnership with the American Council for an Energy Efficient Economy, released a comprehensive set of recommendations to capture energy efficiency opportunities for Maine homes and businesses. And in that report, along with updated and expanded building codes, wider access to efficiency and weatherization improvements, and beneficial electrification strategies, we recommended implementing state-level appliance standards. And as Michael Stoddard with Efficiency Maine mentioned earlier, the Maine Climate Council Buildings, Infrastructure, and Housing Working Group discussed and recommended appliance standards, and we participated as a member of that group and echo those recommendations. And I think it's important to point out that this is one tool out of a portfolio of different efficiency standards and actions that we can take as a state to reduce energy and reduce costs for our residents and businesses. It's been mentioned before, states that adopt appliance standards are often the catalyst for national appliance standards, which, as also mentioned earlier, tend to move pretty slowly through the process. But we believe this bill is important to save energy and water, lower utility costs, and continue to reduce air pollutants. So thank you for the opportunity again to provide testimony today.
Thank you, Mr. Marks. Does anyone have a question for Mr. Marks? All right, thank you for joining us. Next up is Anya Fetcher. Welcome, Ms. Fetcher.
Hi, thank you so much. Good morning, Senator Brenner, Representative Tucker, and members of the Joint Standing Committee on Environment and Natural Resources. My name is Anya Fetcher. I'm here today to speak on behalf of Environment Maine and our thousands of members across the state in strong support of LD 940, which would set energy efficiency standards for 8 appliances and plumbing fixtures in Maine homes and businesses. Establishing minimum efficiency standards for our appliances will save energy, reduce pollution, and lower utility bills. We need your leadership to ensure that our state adopts these common sense standards to protect our planet, public health, and our pocketbooks. Reducing energy waste is one of Maine's best weapons in the fight against global warming. From sea level rise to increased temperatures, we are already seeing the impacts of climate change in our state and across the country. Using energy inefficiently only exacerbates those issues as it increases pollution in our air and water, costs Mainers money, and threatens our ability to repower our energy systems with 100% renewable sources. One practical solution to energy waste in Maine is to establish minimum energy efficiency standards for our appliances and plumbing fixtures to ensure that they're not needlessly wasting energy and water. Representative Bill Pluker, thank you for proposing LD 940, which would set these standards for many products, including things like computers, and as we've discussed, shower heads, which I do personally have one that I use and I'm very happy with. Don't miss it. So as many people have said already, if implemented, these appliances, only these appliances that meet the standards could be sold in Maine beginning in 2023. And we would really see energy savings starting right away or almost right away in 2025. I won't go through all of the specifics because I think that you've heard that and it's included in my written submission, but a few highlights, it would save 24 gigawatts of electricity, which is enough to power 3,000 homes each year. And it would lower consumer utility bills by $9 million annually by 2025. So adopting appliance efficiency standards in Maine is a common sense opportunity to reduce energy waste and progress us towards a greener future and help us to reach the goals laid out in Maine's Climate Action Plan. If we enact these standards, Maine will join a club of appliance standard leaders that have adopted or updated their standards in the last 2 years, including California, Colorado, Hawaii, Nevada, New York, Vermont, and Washington. Along the East Coast, as Marianne said, New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania are considering implementing new standards as well. And just last week, Massachusetts passed higher appliance efficiency standards as part of a larger climate bill, and we can't let them be leading for too long. So we hope that you will stand with us in support of this bill to protect our planet, public health, and pocketbooks. It makes no sense for us to allow our appliances and plumbing fixtures to continue to needlessly waste energy. We hope that Maine will be the next one to take advantage of the cleanest form of energy there is, which is the energy that we never use in the first place. Thank you so much for your time. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions for Ms. Fetcher? All right, I'm not seeing any. Thank you so much for joining us. And next up is Beth Ahern. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Sorry, my computer always does a funky thing when I'm let into the room and I lose you. So good afternoon, Senator Brenner, Representative Tucker, and esteemed members of the Environment and Natural Resources Committee. My name is Beth Ahern, and I'm the Director of Government Affairs for Maine Conservation Voters. Maine Conservation Voters is a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization working to make conservation a political priority. We support LD 940 because appliance standards are a win-win. They reduce harmful air pollution and energy consumption, produce significant cost savings for consumers, and are relatively easy to implement. If Maine is to reach the established goal of an 80% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions by 2050, a goal widely approved by this committee in 2019, we have to take action in every aspect of energy usage. Not only do we need to transition to renewable energy, we need to use less of it and use it more efficiently. Making our buildings, our vehicles, and our appliances and products more energy efficient will play an important role in reaching that goal. There's evidence that these standards work. Federal appliance standards have been very successful and have enjoyed bipartisan support. President Reagan signed the first federal appliance standard into law in 1987, and the U.S. Department of Energy set energy efficient standards for more than 60 categories of products, ranging from light bulbs and common household appliances, like clothes washers and refrigerators, to commercial equipment such as boilers. These minimum federal energy consumption standards already save the U.S. household $500 a year in energy costs, and in Maine, these savings could be calculated at $530 a year. The Appliance Standards Awareness Project report is where I got those figures. Efficiency standards are important for every consumer in the country and are especially beneficial for renters who tend to pay their own energy bills but do not have any decision-making power over the appliances in their homes or apartments. Appliance standards also benefit consumers on fixed incomes who spend a disproportionately high percentage of their income on energy costs. I believe that is 30% was the latest stat that I read, which is really high. LD 940 would create state efficiency standards for appliances and products not included in federal standards, with the goal of saving Mainers more money and further reducing energy use. Maine would not be alone in enacting these standards such that you've heard about those states. The Department of Environmental Protection and Efficiency Maine deserve credit for their work on this legislation, along with the Department of Energy, and I urge you to please vote ought to pass. I also want to add that I'm on a well. I think it's 50% of Mainers do have wells, and I also have a low use shower head, and I get clean every day, so it works. Thank you very much for your time.
Representative Dudera.
Thank you, Chair Brenner, and thank you for being here, Ms. Ahern. And I want to just really thank you for bringing up the renters and that aspect of this bill, because I hadn't thought about that at all. And, you know, I deal with a lot of people in my other profession who are renting. Renters in Maine are having a very hard time right now because rents are rising very, very rapidly. And, you know, this can be a significant thing when people, you know, get a dishwasher, or get a washing machine, or get a dryer, or get any other appliance that's, you know, really costing them a lot on their bills. So I'm glad you brought up that part. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Thanks for joining us.
Lovely to see you all.
You
Take
as
care.
well. Take care.
Bye.
All right, I believe that addresses everyone in the attendee space that had signed up to speak in favor of the legislation. If there are any others here to speak in favor, if they could raise their hand and indicate, that would be great. Not seeing anyone, I'll ask if there's anyone in the attendee space here to speak in opposition to the bill, if they could raise their hand. Katie Riley.
Thank you, Senator Brenner, Representative Tucker, and honorable members of the committee for the opportunity to testify on LD 940 today. My name is Katie Riley, and I work for the Consumer Technology Association, or CTA. Our members are the world's leading innovators, from startups to the global brands that you're probably using today for this hearing, helping to support more than 18 million American jobs. We represent computer and computer monitor manufacturers and brand owners. For the past 15 years, CTA and our members have worked aggressively on energy efficiency issues for consumer electronics. We've been able to quantify through peer-reviewed studies that while the number of electronic devices in US homes has increased 21% since 2010, These devices now account for 25% less residential energy consumption over that time period. We share the legislature's goal of increasing energy efficiency, but we do not believe that the approach outlined in LD 940 is the path to get there. CTA is concerned with the requirements for computers and computer monitors in this bill for two reasons. First, the requirement that computer and computer monitors sold in Maine must meet the California Energy Commission or CEC standards in order to be sold in Maine just isn't necessary. What's important to understand is that our companies sell products on a US or North American market. So the California standard is the most stringent standard in the US North American market. And as such, it is basically the de facto national standard. So this means that computers and monitors sold in Maine already meet the California standards and are already achieving energy efficiency savings for consumers in Maine. We've not seen any evidence that there are computers or monitors offered for sale anywhere in the US, including Maine, that aren't compliant with California. All products are already in compliance without any action being taken by the Maine legislature. So with all due respect, passage of this specific provision in the bill won't result in any new energy efficiency savings. But it does increase compliance costs for my members, which is why we object to the inclusion of these standards. And it will utilize state resources that could potentially be better directed elsewhere, given we're not actually increasing energy efficiency for computers and computer monitors. Our second concern is the very real possibility of creating conflicting standards among states. So LD 940 references the California regulations in effect on a specific date. California actually recently updated its standards, although we're awaiting a regulatory advisory soon, along with actual updates to the California database where products are specifically listed for compliance purposes. In general, though, these regulatory updates are not uncommon in California. The way the LD 940 is currently written is it doesn't allow Maine to keep pace with amendments to California's regulations. A different standard in Maine, if California were to, adopt an amendment for the regulations, means that the potential for computers and computer monitors to be pulled from shelves or blocked from online sales until a legislative fix can be made to bring Maine in alignment with California. This is a very real and valid concern for our industry. So we would recommend that if Maine does choose to move forward with the inclusion of computers and computer monitors in the legislation, that Maine incorporates language to provide, it sounds like now Maine DEP, the authority to keep pace with changes to California's regulations. I included sample language in my written testimony. We're also the industry association that Representative Pluker referenced that he was working with on language. So we thank him for looking at our language and considering its incorporation in the bill. But this is a concern that I think Commissioner Loizem was referring to in her testimony about the importance of DEP having that rulemaking authority, just that ability to be able to keep pace with changes in California. But again, thank you. We are firmly committed to energy efficiency across our industry. We just don't feel that LD 940 is the right path forward for our specific product categories. So thank you. And I'm happy to answer any questions that the committee may have.
Representative Hanley.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Ms. Riley. My question to you is, from what you said, that your industry now is the amount of electronics that are in homes has increased dramatically. And at the very same time, the amount of energy being used has dropped by 25%. Is that part of your testimony?
Yes, it's dropped by, consumer products use 25% less energy consumption than they did as of 2010.
So, I mean, this legislation now has a feel and sound of a solution in search of a problem, if what you're saying is factual.
I can't speak for any of the other product categories that are listed. I would say that we do share that perspective specific to computers and computer monitors.
Thank you very much.
Representative Ziegler.
Yes, and thank you for being here. So are you saying even if we were to allow DEP to do this by rulemaking, you would still oppose this bill? You feel that the bill is not a good way forward?
We oppose the provisions for computers and computer monitors specifically, just because from our perspective, it's not necessary. All computers and computer monitors offered in the state of Maine right now for consumers to purchase are already compliant with California standard. So, obviously from my members' perspective, we need to ensure that we're in compliance with every state. You have an employee who's then monitoring and tracking. So the increase in compliance costs for our members to not actually be achieving energy efficiency savings for consumers because these products are already the only products available on the market just doesn't make sense.
Can I follow up?
Yes, please do.
So you said before the DEP, if they could stay in pace with California, that wouldn't be detrimental to you. But now you're saying it would be, you want to carve out for all computers and electronics. Is that what you're saying to us?
I don't know that thank you for the question, Representative. I don't know that carve out is the appropriate language that I would utilize. I would say just not including computers and computer monitors would be the way to go, the viable path forward from our perspective.
Just continue. That is a carve out. But again, I'm asking you, if DEP could do rulemaking, would you object to this bill?
The ability for DEP to do rulemaking in order to keep pace with California's regulations is absolutely critical for our industry. California does regularly change its regulations. And so it is vital if Maine were to move forward in adopting California's regulations, that Maine have the ability to keep pace with changes to those regulations. At this point in time, I can't say that I would support the inclusion of computers and computer monitors.
And just to finish it off, so if we could keep up with it, then it wouldn't be onerous to your group because we would be doing what you're doing with California and it wouldn't be any difference. So you wouldn't really have to deal with Maine's compliance. And that's a question.
And thank you, Representative. No, I mean, our members would still have to ensure that they are compliant. All of their products are compliant, in the state of Maine, whatever the regulatory activity would look like for my members to have to demonstrate compliance, which right now is a listing in the California database. I believe that's how it's currently written at this point in time. It's still a regulation to which our members need to confirm internally and have on record that they are in compliance with. So there are compliance costs for my member companies, CTA's member companies.
Thank you. I'll stop interrogating you now.
Any additional questions for Ms. Riley? All right, seeing none. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Ms. Riley. And we'll move on to folks that are in the attendee space that are here to speak neither for nor against the legislation. If you could raise your little hand. All right, we'll move through in this order, Mr. Picard and Mr. Kraus. Welcome, Mr. Picard. Nice to see you.
Good afternoon, Senator Brenner, Representative Tucker, and members of the Environment and Natural Resources Committee. I am Curtis Picard, President and CEO of the Retail Association of Maine. I'm here today to testify neither for nor against LD 940, and I'll be very brief. We have one small change to recommend to the committee. While we think that the chances of a business violating this law, as the California standards are the de facto national standards, would be very slim, LD 940 has some potentially harsh penalties for a business that violates this law. In Section C, it reads, a person who violates paragraph A commits a civil violation for which a fine of not more than $100 may be adjudged for each unit of a product sold or offered for sale in violation of paragraph A. This bill regulates products such as aerators, shower heads, and other fixtures. Many of these items sell for less than $100 and are likely to be marketed and sold in higher volumes than a commercial hot food holding cabinet, for example. We would recommend a more consistent penalty and perhaps simply deleting the reference to each unit of a product sold or offered for sale. Thank you for the opportunity to offer or share our concerns with you. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions for Mr. Picard? Representative Ziegler, your hand's up, but I'm wondering if that's a residual hand. Okay. Any questions for Mr. Picard? All right, not seeing any. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
And we'll move on to Mr. Roger Kraus. Welcome, Mr. Kraus.
Good afternoon. Thank you. Representative Senator Brenner, Representative Tucker, members of the Committee on Environment and Natural Resources. I'm Roger Kraus. I'm the General Manager of the Kennebec Water District in Waterville. And I'm here today representing the Maine Water Utilities Association to provide testimony neither for nor against. So just some information that we wanted to provide. LD 940 seeks to establish appliance water standards based upon standards established in the state of California. As an association representing water utilities in Maine, we provide the following information related to Maine water supplies. First, it is important to understand that the smallest percentage of water utility utilized by customers, excuse me, the small percentage of water utilized by customers of water utilities in Maine relative to the amount of water in Maine. Based upon information from the Maine Geological Survey and the U.S. Geological Survey, approximately 42 inches of rain falls on the state of Maine each year. This equals about 24 trillion gallons of water annually. By contrast, Maine water utilities use approximately 31 billion gallons, or 0.13% of all the water that falls on the state of Maine. Second, decreases in industrial usage in Maine over the past 40 years has resulted in a significant decrease in water usage from many water utilities. Additionally, more efficient water fixtures already on the market have contributed to a steady decline in the average residential water usage. Consequently, most water utilities have excess water capacity. As an example, the Kennebec Water District, where I work, in the late 1990s, we were producing 7 to 8 million gallons a day of water. But due to reductions from industrial users, the Kennebec Water District now produces less than 3 million gallons a day. This is about a 60% reduction in our production. During this time, the water supply, which is our supply water is China Lake, has not decreased its availability. Maine has a water resource regulatory regime based upon the sustainability of the water resource. This prevents any individual water user from negatively impacting the resource and other water users. This has prevented issues seen in other states like California, where political water allocation regimes have allocated water beyond the capacity of the resource. In conclusion, we have no position on this bill. However, it's important to understand that Maine's water resource picture is significantly different than that of California. While California's water utilities are frequently impacted by drought, water supply in Maine is generally abundant, and only a handful of utilities in Maine are adversely affected by drought on an infrequent basis. And I'll be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Kraus? Yes, Representative Hanley.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, thank you, Mr. Kraus, for your statements. Do you have written testimony with all these numbers and figures you just delivered?
Yes, it should have been uploaded this morning.
I just checked the testimonial page. I couldn't find it listed. Maybe it hasn't been put up yet. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Mr. Kraus, perhaps you can send it directly to the committee so that Mr. Hanley can we can make sure Representative Hanley has access to it. Yes, Representative Ziegler.
Yes, two issues. One is that we seem to have a aging infrastructure for water. So if we were to reduce the use of it, wouldn't that be beneficial to an aging infrastructure, A? And B, yes, we do have an aquifer that is quite capable of meeting our needs usually. But in the last few years, we've had a period of drought in between periods of rainfall, and that seems to be associated with climate disruption. And I've had to put in for several of my constituents to have help with their wells because they dried. They were dry. So I think going forward, we really have to be very, very careful about assuming that we'll always have this aquifer. So if you could answer the issue in regards to a aging infrastructure for water systems and how reducing the use would be beneficial, and the possibility of a very inconsistent amount of rainfall and the aquifers being replenished. Thank you.
Sure. Yes. So we certainly have aging infrastructure. There's no doubt about that, where we have a lot of buried pipe that needs to be replaced, or treatment systems or storage tanks. So most of our costs are, I would say, are sunk costs, where the cost of production of water is actually a fairly low cost compared to the infrastructure to convey that water. So if there is a reduction in water usage, we still have the same sunk costs that need to be recuperated from ratepayers. I think these are kind of different issues as far as availability of supply, or in an unusual case where there's a reduction in supply, and replace an aging infrastructure. If there is a reduction in supply where the supply is not sufficient, there would be need to develop an additional supply, and that's true. But that's the majority of utilities in Maine have abundant supplies. There are some coastal communities that have some challenges with meeting supplies during dry weather conditions, but in general, across the state, there's an abundance of water. And to that other point about, will climate adjust how much water we're getting in any given year? Yeah, that's possible. But in some of the climate models, I think we're supposed to get more moisture in Maine than we have historically. Whether that's true or not, I'm not the person perhaps to ask that. But again, most of our supplies have more than adequate capacity. So if there are seasonal variations or annual variations in additional resources, in precipitation, most utilities are going to be able to weather that. So we don't have a position on this bill, but we have, if you're taking the California model to make a decision about what to apply to Maine, that may not be the best model to use for determining, what are our water resources like in Maine. Bob Marvany, Dr. Marvany with the Department of Agriculture, Conservation and Forestry has, as you've probably heard from him before, has great information about our water resources in Maine, and he can give you a lot of detail. But our experience is that Maine water utilities have more capacity than demand.
Does anyone else have a question for Mr. Kraus? I have a question for you, Mr. Kraus. How would you address the issue of a renter who's on city water and not, in terms of them having to pay the fee, and whether or not it might make sense for them to have something more efficient in their rental unit for water?
Well, I guess I'm not sure what you're asking there specifically, but we
well, it wouldn't be about a water resource issue. It would be about a cost issue.
Right. So we provide water to our customers, whoever signs up for the water. So in some cases it's the landlord, in some cases it's the tenant that signs up for water. We don't know what's beyond the meter as far as what they have for water efficient fixtures or energy efficient fixtures in there. we're supplying water, and so we're kind of blind to that. We have no mechanism to understand what's beyond the meter as far as how, we don't even know how many people are living in the unit, let alone what kind of fixtures they might have. So if there's lots of water usage because of high usage fixtures, then that whoever is the account holder is going to pay for that additional usage.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Are there any other folks in the attendee space that would like to speak neither for nor against the legislation? All right, I'm not seeing anyone raising a hand, so I believe that concludes our public hearing for LD 940. Is there any information folks would like to have available for the work session? Yes, Representative Tucker. Yeah, there you go.
Thank you very much. For the work session, I'd like to ask if OPLA and Ms. Schneider could take the amendment offered by Commissioner Loisem and talk to Bill Pluker and see if Mr. Pluker would like to put in a strike and replace amendment so that the OPLA office can be working on it for purposes of format and consistency with our statutory style manual. If Mr. Pluker does not care to do that, then I would use my name. I'm not sure if you need a legislator to have OPLA work on an amendment or not, but it seems to me Mr. Pluker as the sponsor probably would have some interest there.
Madam Chair.
Yes, please.
I'd be happy to work on that with OPLA and also take into account some of the amendment offered by CTA.
My second comment is on Representative Ziegler's mantelpiece. He has this odd picture behind him, and I didn't know if that was associated with him or not.
May I answer the question?
Oh, please do.
You don't recognize this room, Ralph? Michelle Dunphy's room. That's her husband. That's a painting of her husband. I'm not that bald.
Okay, thank you very much.
I am that bald.
Representative Hanley.
I thought that was his baby picture.
I was never a baby, Representative Hanley. I came out 175-pound adult from the very beginning.
Could we see that close up, please?
Only because you asked nicely.
My request for the work session is to have the Maine State Geologist give us a report on the situation of the aquifers in the state of Maine.
Okay. Any additional requests for the work session? All right, I believe that concludes our day, unless there's anything that I'm forgetting. Any comments?
See you tomorrow.
We'll see each other tomorrow. Looking forward to time together. All right, and with that, we'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right, have a good afternoon, everyone.